Hello, hello, hello. This is CRP talking to you live. It's great to be back. I know I started a little early, so don't worry. We'll wait around a little bit till everybody's in the broadcast. If you can hear me properly, as always, can you please raise your little hand? I'd so appreciate it if you can hear me properly. Fantastic. That's superb. And I just had an audio check, and I could hear the webinar robot female voice talking, so it sounds like I've got everything going. Let me just say hi to a couple of people here. And where's Mr. Blue? I'm disappointed. I'm hurt. I'm hurt. Mr. Blue is not around. He's probably like listening to somebody else's broadcast, the cheating bastard. We'll rib him when he comes in. I'm sure he will. Alvaro Barreda, how are you? Are you there? Can you hear me? Hello, Alvaro. Oh, hello, you there?
Hello, Coach.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to hear from you.
Hi, how you doing, Coach? You all right?
Yeah, just wanted to check the audio to make sure it's working properly. Great that you're here, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm just talking to my brother about you and the great example that you have been to us. And I'm just looking forward to hear your webinar.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alvaro. And say hi to your brother.
Hey.
Oh, oops, sorry, man. I cut you off. I'm a dickhead. Sorry about that, Alvaro. That was my mistake. Yeah, I just wanted to get to a couple of other people just to say hi. Let me see. Carmen, are you there? Oops, wait. Carmen, let me unmute you, Carmen. There we go. Carmen, you there?
Yep, I'm here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming.
Yep. Looking forward to the seminar.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty good show because I'm going to talk about some books that I think are really interesting. And then we're going to get into logic, intuition, and critical thinking. Like I have a whole presentation and shit, like big brain shit, you know? Yeah, prepare to be amazed. Yeah. Like I even checked Wikipedia for this fucking presentation. That's how prepared I am. How have you been, my man?
I'm doing good. Just working out and reading. That's all I can do. I'm working from home too, so.
What are you reading?
Right now, I'm reading about the 48 Laws of Power.
Oh, the 48 Laws of Power. Yeah, that's a classic. Yeah. It's really interesting. It's like the mainstream version of Machiavelli's The Prince.
I ordered that one too. I haven't come. I ordered from Amazon, but like some of the books are late. I think it's because like all the
because they burned their warehouse down. That's why it's late. Damn, son. Yeah. Well, you know, just to end the suspense, I'm not going to be talking much about the riots. Because right now it's still not over, and so I'd much prefer to talk about it when it's sort of like over. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be in a week or two, but who knows at this point. Okay. But in this broadcast, just a fair warning to everybody, I'm not going to be talking about the riots and the looting right now, except maybe a little bit at the end when we have our Q&A. But I really want to focus on this logic, intuition, and critical thinking stuff that I think is really important because I'm going to mute you, Carmen, but great to see you back, by the way.
Hi.
Yeah. I just so that you know why I'm thinking about this, because this man here, who's actually here, Amine, yeah, he's the one to blame. Hey, Amine, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. You're the one to blame. You're the one that made me do this topic and inflict it on everybody. So yeah.
Yes, you can blame me.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So everybody in the webinar, if you want to throw your Rotten Tomatoes, don't throw them at me, please. Just throw them to Amine.
Yes, this direction.
Yeah.
It's Amin, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Everyone gets it.
And by the way,
the
topic he suggested in the thing was intuition versus analytical thinking, when and how each. Okay, that was a really good topic, and a lot of people gave it a thumbs up, and I thought it'd be great to do it. So I mean, you know, thanks a lot. That was a great topic. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Coach.
Yeah, so just wanted to tell you that before we get started. And yeah, we're 2 minutes past the hour, so we're going to get started now. Let me just check to make sure. As usual, you know, I'm my own producer, so I'm kind of shitty here. So you're going to have to bear with me. Okay. So this week in books, which I'm going to talk about first. Okay. These are 3 books that I have read, am reading, and will have read. The first one is called MBS by a guy called Ben Hubbard. These books, by the way, are brand new. They're hot off the presses. The second one by Catherine Belton is called Putin's People. And the third is called The Third Revolution by Elizabeth Economy. Now, these 3 books are about 3 individuals that I think are extremely important that you pay attention to. The first one, MBS, is about Mohammed bin Salman. He is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. He's not the king, he's the son of the king, but he is the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia. The man is 35 years old. He is going to be in power for a long goddamn time. Saudi Arabia matters because it's the #1 oil producer in the world, because it is a strategic US partner. It is extremely important to know this man. And I read this book. It was a fascinating read. I highly recommend it. All these books are really interesting, and I'm going to get to each of them in turn. I recommend you read all of them, even though all of them have flaws that I'm going to discuss. And by the way, the issue is not so much you reading these particular books. I want you guys to pay attention to these three men: Mohammed bin Salman, Vladimir Putin, who is the president of Russia, and Xi Jinping, who is the the premier of China. He's the #1 guy. He's the premier. He's also the head of the Chinese Communist Party. He's the man. He is the Asiatic dictator in the Hegelian phrase, because the philosopher Hegel referred to a type of government that he called the Asiatic dictatorship, where there was one man at the top who was totally free, and he sat on a pyramid of slaves. That's how he defined it, basically. Now, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Mohammed bin Salman are the men who are going to change the destiny, or they are the challenges that the United States has to face. And so it pays to pay attention to these men. I'm not saying to read these books, go out and buy them and read them cover to cover. No, I'm saying read these books if you come across them, or pay attention to these guys, because they matter. They matter a lot, because these guys, Vladimir Putin is going to be in power for a while, and he is a very, very capable individual. Xi Jinping, the same thing. Mohammed bin Salman, the same thing. These guys are tough as nails, and it pays to study these guys. Now, the first book, MBS, it's a great book. It gives a lot of background to Mohammed bin Salman, a lot of things I had no idea. For instance, he went to university in Saudi Arabia. He's one of the few of the Saudi family, of the Saud family rather, who did not study overseas. He is very much like a hometown boy of Saudi Arabia. He likes Saudi Arabian culture, unlike a lot of the other princes in the Saud family, who sort of like hate Saudi culture and want to live abroad and be westernized and hang out in the West. No. He likes being in Saudi Arabia. He enjoys the country. He understands the mentality of the people. He is a very ruthless individual. The book goes into some detail about the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, who was that journalist who was killed and dismembered in the Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey, in Ankara. But not only that, Ben Hubbard in this book goes through the history of Mohammed bin Salman. It's called MBS because of his initials, of course. That's how everybody talks about him. And he is a ruthless individual. He is very, very capable. He studied law, like I said. He came in second in his university, and he earned it. He is smart. He's not some playboy. Yeah, he's got like toys and shit like that. Sure. I mean, like he's got like some boat that's worth like $450 million. Yeah, but he's capable. He's smart. He knows what he's doing, and he is diehard Wahhabist. He is exporting Wahhabism. He is exporting terrorism. He is a dangerous guy, and he's very capable. He doesn't fuck around. He's somebody that you want to pay attention to and learn from. The flaws of the book, of this particular book, is that Ben Hubbard is a New York Times reporter, and look, whatever is being said about the New York Times, yeah, sure, but this guy, Ben Hubbard, is a very capable journalist. He is very, very smart. He lived in Saudi Arabia. He speaks Arabic. Excuse me, no, he didn't live in Saudi Arabia. He went there lots of times. He does speak Arabic. He lived in Lebanon. He couldn't live in Saudi Arabia because they wouldn't let him, but he traveled there as often as he could. Very capable guy, very, very good writer. He misses the boat insofar as the financial relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States, which is really key, because Saudi Arabia and the United States have a deal that was cut in 1974, and that deal is very simple. The United States will sell all the weapons that Saudi Arabia wants and will buy all the oil that Saudi Arabia produces on the one condition that it must sell its oil, both the United States and to every other customer on earth, in dollars. Now, this is a key reason that the dollar is the reserve currency worldwide. This is really important because a lot of people ask, how come the federal government deficits don't matter? Well, because in a very real sense, in an economic sense, Saudi Arabia is the 51st state of the United States because it is selling all of its product in dollars. Whether it sells it to the United States or it sells it to other countries, it's selling it in dollars. And so in an economic sense, Saudi Arabia is part of the United States, like I said, as if it were a 51st state. And because of that, even though the federal government of the United States is running huge deficits, I mean, the deficit now is going to be like over $1 trillion or something or more. I mean, God knows how much it's going to be because of the COVID-19 thing. But because Saudi Arabia buys all of it, I mean, sells all of its oils only in dollars, and it brings in dollars from other countries. If you look at it in those terms, then the United States basically, it's as if it had another state that's bringing in cash, and therefore it normalizes its balance of payments. That's the key issue. Even though the United States seems to be running trade deficits and federal government deficits, because of the Simon Treaty of 1974 that integrated the Saudi Arabia sales in dollars in exchange for all the weapons that they wanted, well, that's why the United States can run these deficits, both federal spending deficits and trade deficits, okay? That's why this guy matters, because this guy could rescind that treaty whenever he wanted to. And if he were to do so, that would be the collapse of the American economy. You might not realize this, but this guy has the United States economy by the balls, and he can squeeze whenever he wants to, okay? So that's why this guy matters. Now, Vladimir Putin, of course, he's the leader of Russia. Russia is a second-tier nation. Its economy is the size of Italy's. The only thing that distinguishes it is that it has nuclear weapons, of course, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and it has a first-rate military. Vladimir Putin is a KGB officer. He is very, very capable, very, very ruthless. He has Russia firmly in hand, and he has been making Russia better, stronger during the last 20 years of his regime. He is the man in Russia, quite simply. I'm halfway through this book. I finished the MBS book. I'm halfway through Putin's People, the Catherine Belton book about Vladimir Putin. It's extraordinarily interesting. You learn a lot about Putin. Catherine Belton is part of this establishment hysteria over Russia, and he just paints Putin as a bad guy who, when he was deputy mayor of St. Petersburg, which is where he originated as a politician, he was in cahoots, in bed with gangsters in St. Petersburg. But he doesn't, she doesn't explain, Catherine Belton does not explain in her book why he got in bed with these criminal organizations. And she doesn't explain the background of lawlessness that was going on in St. Petersburg. It's really interesting for what I'm going to talk about in a little bit, which is in this book, in the Catherine Belton book. If you read it, he just comes across as a bad man. It's what she's not saying or explaining or filling in that makes you realize that gives you the skewed view of Vladimir Putin. Because if you understood that in the 90s, when Vladimir Putin was rising and he was deputy mayor of St. Petersburg, in that period, he aligned himself with mafia gangs, with one mafia gang in particular. And you think, oh, he's just a mafia goon or whatever, or he's a KGB mafia criminal, right? But then there's one little tidbit that Catherine Belton throws out there, that Putin sent his 2 young daughters, who were small children at that time, sent them overseas to Germany. Why would he do that? Think about it. Why would you separate yourself from your daughters, whom of course you love? I mean, your small children, 8, 10 years old, something like that. Send them to a foreign country while you're the deputy mayor of a major city in Russia. Why would you do that? Well, of course, because, see, there were a bunch of other gangs. That's what Catherine Belton is not saying, or she's sort of like, let's slide by, but doesn't really fill in the blanks. And so once you see the context and realize that this guy, it's not that he allied himself with the mafia and he was KGB mafia and doing God knows what in St. Petersburg. No, it's that St. Petersburg was the fucking Wild West. There were a bunch of different mafia gangs running around trying to steal shit and take over control. And he allied himself with one so as to take total control of the city and eventually wipe out those mafia gangs, which he eventually did. Okay. And then you realize it's a totally different thing. The fact that he sent his kids, his 2 daughters, abroad, which no father in his right mind would ever want to do, unless he was really fucking scared. Yeah. And this guy, he's KGB, he's a tough motherfucker. He's not gonna, piss his pants, if you say boo to him, okay? So if he sends his kids abroad, he's scared. He's really scared. And if he's scared, he's probably got an incredibly good reason to be scared, okay? Those are the reasons that Catherine Belton doesn't cover. She just highlights Putin himself and his activity, but puts the background into like soft contrast. So it sort of like disappears and vanishes, and you don't realize the context in which he was acting. So this book is excellent insofar as bringing what he did into sharp relief, but very bad in putting it into context. You see what I'm saying? It's like she brings out Putin and like, ooh, evil Putin, but the background that led him to act in evil and nefarious ways is, whitewashed. See, that's why this book fails, but it's very interesting to learn more about Putin, and that's why I picked it up. Now, the third book, The Third Revolution, it refers to in China. There's a sense that there have been 3 revolutions in the 20th and 21st century. The first revolution was the Chinese communist takeover, not really a revolution, in 1949, where they defeated the nationalists. The second revolution was in 1989, when Deng Xiaoping basically created the notion of capitalist socialism, okay, free market socialism, free market communism, okay. And the third revolution is what Xi Jinping is doing now, which is basically taking over all of China. Before, China was ruled by committee, a committee of old men, several committees of old men, and they were like overlapping in different areas, and everything was done by consensus. But Xi Jinping has centralized authority. He's a relatively young man, and he has been taking the reins of power of the entire Chinese state and the Communist Party of China. And what's really interesting, see, Elizabeth Economy is, let me just read, I've got the thing right here. I'll just read her thing. Elizabeth Economy is the CV Star Senior Fellow and Director for Asia Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. That's all you need to know. This woman is as establishment as it gets, right? And she wrote a very, very capable book that outlines the various aspects of what Xi Jinping is doing in China. Now, I started reading this book, and as I started reading it, I realized that I have lacunae insofar as my knowledge of Chinese history. I studied Chinese history, the Mongol Empire specifically, back when I was in college. I studied under a great professor called Pamela Crossley. She was fucking big brain. Oof, man. That bitch scared the fuck out of me because she was a tough, tough, tough bitch. I look back on her so fondly because she was this Squat little woman with short red hair with like a shock of white. She must have had like on her scalp like a birthmark. And so like right on the crown of her head, there came this shock of white, straight white hair just sticking out and falling sort of like over her forehead. She had these little glasses and she always dressed like I swear to God, like a Jedi Knight or something, like with like long flowing robes kind of thing, right? And she was like very serious with like sort of like chipmunk cheeks kind of thing, yeah, and these little round glasses like John Lennon glasses, and she blinked very rarely and rather slowly, but very rarely. It was a little unnerving, and she'd stare at you expressionless as you talked, which would intimidate the fuck out of everybody. I remember the first class we had, it was about the history of the Mongol Empire. You know, I don't know, 60 people showed up to the class because it sounded really exciting. And then they handed out the syllabus and you had to read like 3 books a week. It was a tough fucking class. And as people like started flipping through the syllabus right there in that first class, and she's like describing what the class is going to be about, people just started walking out because they realized they'd have to work like hell to make it through that class. 60 people were in that class. And when it started, and by the end of it, there were like 8 of us. Yeah, and the 8 of us took this class. It was the toughest class I ever took. I learned the most from it because of that woman who, bless her heart. And anyway, I'm bringing this up because she taught me a lot about Chinese history, but during the 12th century, 13th and 14th centuries, right up to Kublai Khan. But after that, I sort of like realized on reading this book that I really didn't know that much. And so I'm going to go on a Chinese history kick. But this information that I'm telling you about my lack of knowledge about China is going to pop up later in this discussion. Okay, so bear with me for a minute. This book tells the state of affairs of China now. It is the consensus opinion of the Washington establishment insofar as China is concerned. China is a challenge to the global hegemony of the United States. Xi Jinping wants to overtake the United States as the dominant global power. He doesn't want to be like the co-equal power. No, he wants to take over, be the guy. And he is nationalistic, very aggressive, very smart, and he thinks, and the Chinese Communist Party think long term. These guys are smart and capable. Okay, so these 3 men, you should study them. You should look into them. It's worthwhile. If you get any of these books, great. If you read completely different books, that's great too. What's important is that you look into these 3 guys, because these guys are the men who are going to influence American history and the American experience more than anyone else. Okay? Okay, so let me move on to the next thing. Okay, so this is today's week in the weekly webinar, Logic, Intuition, and Critical Thinking. Here's the complete outline of what I'm going to be discussing, okay? And this topic, I wanted to do this topic, and I'll explain why before I get into it. Because see, right now, as you all know, we're going through these riots and whatnot, and things are still in flux. We don't know how this is going to play out. We don't yet know if it's going to get worse or if it's going to die down or what's going to happen. We do know, and we see every day, that people are going fucking nuts. We also see that a lot of this is very reminiscent of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, when there were like these struggle sessions. Struggle sessions would be like when somebody would stand up in front of the crowd, the mob, and confess his sins, and the mob would humiliate him and berate him and yell at him and sometimes throw things at him and sometimes just lynch him right then and there. Okay, these struggle sessions, we are seeing them. They happened in communist China during the 50s and the 60s. They are happening now in the year 2020 of our Lord in the United States of America. This is serious shit. This is like as serious as a fucking heart attack. And it's at this time, it is unclear if this is going to get worse. We are going to look back on this period and be ashamed of it, okay? I mean, we got to recognize this, because this kind of humiliation and these struggle sessions and whatnot, it's despicable. And it seems to me at this time that somebody else is directing this shit, okay? But I don't want to jump into conspiracy theories. Rather than that, I want to start thinking about how you think and how do you look at the world, and a suggestion of how and when to, go with your intuition, go with your gut, and when to think critically, analytically. I mean, when do you do the two? Okay, when do you do this one or the other one? Okay, and how do they coexist? Well, I'm going to get into it because you see, all this stuff has been thought about by a very, very capable philosopher called C.S. Peirce. It's pronounced Peirce. His name is spelled P-E-I-R-C-E. Note, it's not Pierce. A lot of people pronounce it as Pierce. It's pronounced Peirce. P-E as in Edward, I as in India, R-C-E. C.S. Peirce. Now, he was a 19th century American philosopher. He was of the pragmatist school, which, of course, as you realize by the name alone, you realize that he's my kind of philosopher. Pragmatism. That's me. There are lots of questions that I don't know the answer to, but it's irrelevant to know the answers to them because they don't really affect you. It's sort of like, is this reality? I don't know. It seems real enough to me, so fuck it. Assume that it is and move on. That's pragmatism. C.S. Peirce was the man who defined the three kinds of inference that you have, okay? Because this is what critical thinking is. Critical thinking is looking at things analytically, logically, and you always use three kinds of inference. The first one is the one that we all know, deductive inference. The conclusion is contained in the premises. For instance, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, ergo Socrates is mortal. The conclusion, Socrates is mortal, is contained in the two premises. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. You see, that's a deductive inference. An inductive inference is where the conclusion follows from the premises. Premises in this case is also evidence. For instance, previously in the past, people thought that swans were white. Why? Why was that conclusion? Because every swan they saw was white every single time. Eventually, when Captain Cook in 1769 or 1779, I forget, when Captain Cook got to, I think it was Australia, and he came across black swans, then it was like, oh, okay, so some swans are black. Okay, not all swans are white, but you see the point. See, an inductive inference flows from the premises, flows from the previous information that you have had, the previous experiences that you have had. Stereotypes are inductive inferences. Remember in last episode, in the last broadcast last week, I was talking about racial stereotypes and different kinds of stereotypes that we made, and I talked about the stereotype of the doctor. When you see a man in a white lab coat with a stethoscope around his neck, you automatically infer that he's a doctor. He has not proven to you that he is a doctor. He has not shown you any accreditation, any identity card. He hasn't shown you his university degree or his medical school degree. Just from his clothes, you say, oh, he's a doctor. Oh yeah, he's dressed in comfortable shoes, blue-green scrubs, a white lab coat. He's got a pocket protector and he's got a stethoscope around his neck. He's a doctor. How do you know that? Well, because every single guy who's dressed like that or similar to that has turned out to be a doctor. So therefore, the next guy you see like that, oh, he's a doctor. That's a stereotype. That is an inductive inference. You have facts in the past, facts, premises, whatever, and they lead you to a conclusion, to an inference. That's inductive inference. Now, abductive inference. This is a conclusion that is guessed from observation. And said another way, it is the explanation or the conclusion that is simplest to account for the most facts. That is Occam's razor. Occam's razor is the notion that the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. Now, abductive inference, few people talk about abductive inference, and it's extremely important. The fact of the matter is, this is my strong suit, abductive inference. I'm extremely good at this kind of inference, which is looking at few bits and pieces of information, and from those few bits and pieces of information, drawing a conclusion, an explanation for all of these facts that is most reasonable or logical. Abductive inferences are extraordinarily important because they are the foundation of the scientific method. What's the scientific method? You have a hypothesis, you create an experiment to test the hypothesis. The experiment tests the hypothesis in a control situation, and either it proves the hypothesis correct or proves that the hypothesis is wrong, or in its defect, proves that more experimentation is needed. Now, those are basically the three outcomes, right? But it all starts with a hypothesis. What's a hypothesis? It's an educated guess, okay? Like, for instance, let me give you a specific example. Suppose we're talking about medicine. This actually happened to me recently. Suppose we're talking about medicine, and you have a patient, and the patient is suffering heart arrhythmia. And you think to yourself, it could be a deficiency in his diet, it could be stress related, or it could be some other factor. So what do? You say to yourself, well, we're going to have to test the different things. And what have you noticed? Well, you've noticed that the patient with heart arrhythmia, when he has taken sun, like he's been sunbathing, he doesn't have any heart arrhythmia for several days, if not weeks. And so you say to yourself, maybe it's an issue of lack of vitamin D. And so what you do is that, you right there, you have made a hypothesis. Maybe his heart arrhythmia is the result of lack of vitamin D, because of course vitamin D is produced when you sunbathe, right? There are two ways to produce vitamin D. One way is naturally via ultraviolet rays from the sun that react with certain enzymes in your skin to produce vitamin D. That's one way. The other way is to take a pill. But the pill has certain side effects, and it's not as effective because it's basically a hormone that triggers the production of vitamin D in your body hormonally. And this causes side effects, and it is not so effective as sunlight, okay? And so you want to make sure that this guy that has heart arrhythmia, maybe the heart arrhythmia is because of a lack of vitamin D, and so you conduct experiments. And you see, the notion that maybe the patient is suffering from heart arrhythmia comes from the observation, the abductive inference that when he had sunlight, when he sunbathed, he didn't have heart arrhythmia. But think of all the other things that the patient could have been doing. You're ignoring all those other things. Yeah, because abductive inference, you are selectively choosing which facts to focus on in order to arrive at a manageable conclusion, a conclusion that can be tested somehow. You see? You see the difference between abductive inference and inductive inference? It's very important that you understand this difference, because in inductive inference, there's a clear through line. Let me give you another example of inductive inference. In the past, primitive civilizations had no idea that the Earth circled the sun. They have no idea. All they saw was that the Earth was very stable, didn't move, and every day, every morning, the sun would be in the east, rising up. It would rise and cross the sky and set in the west. Every single day it had happened. And so they had assumed that it was going to happen tomorrow. They had concluded that it would happen every day because it had happened every day in the past. You see, that's an inference, because they have no idea, they have no other explanation for what's going on except their experience. You see? That's an inductive inference, but an abductive inference is when you are selectively taking information, clues, data, and from there drawing an explanation that might account for all of the data, not just those little bits that you selectively chose, but all of the data that's happening at that time, okay? Abductive inference is, of course, far less precise, but of course, it's the basis of a hypothesis. In the scientific method, that's the whole point. What you want to be doing is discounting hypotheses, because you want to get a hypothesis, test it, and is it true or false? It's false, then you discard it. And you keep on generating hypotheses and generating experiments to test the hypothesis, and what you want to do is to discount the hypotheses as quickly as possible, prove that they're wrong, until you hit on a hypothesis that you do the experiment and you can't prove that it's wrong. And so you do another experiment, a different experiment, to test the hypothesis from a different angle. And does it fail that test? It doesn't, i.e. the experiment doesn't prove the hypothesis false. Then you keep on doing more and more and more experiments. A hypothesis will never be proven true. It can only be proven false. But a hypothesis can be considered to be true inductively because you have experimented on it so many times and it passes with flying colors every time that you get to the point that it is likely to be true. You see the difference? You see how it works? It's very important that you understand this. You should study deductive, inductive, and abductive inferences so that you understand what you are doing when you are thinking critically. A lot of times people think critically and they don't realize what form of logic they are using. And sometimes they don't realize that they are mixing up different forms of inference and coming to the wrong conclusion. I'm going to get to that later on in this conversation, in this broadcast. But it's very important that you understand this so that when you are thinking critically, you recognize what form of inference you are using. Are you deducing things? Are you inducing things? Or are you using an abductive inference? Excuse me. You see what I'm saying? It's very important that you realize that about yourself. Okay? Don't just say, oh, I'm thinking critically and just mix and match. No, you have to be very, very careful because that way you can hit the right answer, the correct answer. Okay? And more to the point, you're going to know when you are approximating a truth but haven't really landed on it. Because like, for instance, in abductive inferences, see, people said, oh yeah, all swans are white, until finally they came across a black swan, and then they had to change their minds because there was the black swan, big as life, proving the inductive inference that all swans are white to be false. A lot of times you're going to hold on to an inference and insist that it's true in the face of evidence, in the face of a black swan that's looking right at you. And you're going to say, no, no, swans are white, swans are white, swans are white. And you're going to get locked into the incorrect position because you will not, you will be emotionally invested in your conclusion, which is what you never want to do. You want to know why you have a certain conclusion. If you arrived at it deductively, that's great. If you arrived at it inductively, great. Abductively, which is the weakest form, that's great too. But in the face of new evidence, you have to be willing to drop it like a hot rock and integrate the new evidence, the evidence that you see right in front of you, the black swan that's staring you right in the face. Because or else you're going to look like a fucking idiot like these leftists do, okay? But we'll get to that in a moment. Now, contrasted to critical thinking, what is intuition? It's very simple if you think about it. Intuition, a gut feeling, whatever, it's an unconscious abductive inference that becomes a feeling. Now, what does that mean? It means that, see, your perceptions, your senses of reality sometimes are smarter than you are. And they pick up a lot of things that you might not recognize on a conscious level, or might notice on a conscious level, but not recognize the importance of them on a conscious level. And so because of this, sometimes your unconscious picks up a lot of little data points and comes to a conclusion and tries to make you feel it, and you feel uneasy. You feel that there's something there and you can't quite put your finger on it. Have you noticed too that sometimes, you get this weird feeling like that, this weird sense that, you don't quite get it, that it's not quite like that, and you go to sleep and you wake up in the next morning and you're like, I got it. I know what's going on. It's like you're illuminated. Yeah, because what happens is that when you're sleeping, especially when you get a full night's sleep, which I talked about in a previous broadcast, when you get a full night's sleep, a lot of times your unconscious starts working overtime and puts the pieces together. And sort of like pushes it up onto the surface of the conscious mind. and you wake up and you got the solution. I mean, how many times does that happen to you? It happens to me all the time, that I wake up in the morning and like, oh yeah, this, yeah, exactly, okay? It's an abductive inference, or sometimes it's an inductive inference that you have failed to recognize, okay? Because sometimes you just don't see it, but your unconscious does, and you have this feeling. It's different from fear. Notice this, because sometimes we're afraid of taking a certain decision or a certain course of action. That's very, very different from having an intuition. And you have to recognize which is the two, because a lot of times, and I failed to write this here on the outline, but note it for yourselves. A lot of times you confuse a valid intuition that makes you uneasy with fear of doing something. And sometimes you allow the fear to say, oh, I just don't have a good feeling about it, so I'm not going to do it. Okay? I mean, like, for instance, let's take a hypothetical. Suppose, you're going to jump out of an airplane in a parachute, right? Of course, you're going to be nervous about it. Who wouldn't be? If you've never done it before, and probably if you've done it several times before, you're still going to be nervous, right? But suppose, like you were watching as they were packing your bag and you didn't quite understand it, but you got like this weird feeling. That's an intuition. But at the same time, you're going to have fear. And so here comes the hard part. It's sort of like distinguishing which is fear and which is like a general, like a genuine rather, feeling that something is not quite right. You see, this is important. You got to recognize which of the two is going on. Perhaps the airplane example is a bad example. Okay, I mean the parachuting example is a bad example. There's suppose something else, but you get my point. You have to notice which is it. Are you afraid or are you sensing something? If you can't figure out right away, err on the conservative side. Okay, I mean, look. A lot of guys are like, oh, you have to, be fearless and whatever. No. Fear is a perfectly natural emotion, and to ignore it and to pretend that you're not afraid is just stupid. Just idiots pretend that they're not afraid. Everybody's afraid. The issue is you don't want your fear to paralyze you. That's what you want. I mean, you want to accept your fear and set it aside and move forward. But what happens sometimes, an intuition will give your fear sort of like a boost, and you have to look into yourself, and you have to know yourself in order to do this. You have to recognize, am I afraid or am I sensing something off? And don't fall for the trap of thinking, oh, I'm afraid and therefore I must be sensing something. No, sometimes it's just fear. Sometimes you've seen all the angles and you're just afraid, but you have to recognize that. Okay, you have to recognize that and not allow your fear to dictate your actions. But at the same time, you have to know yourself well enough to realize this is an intuition. I feel that something's off, so I'm going to walk away. Now, in my own case, I'll tell you there have been a lot of opportunities where I've had a sensation and I just chose to walk away. And the outcome, the negative outcome, wasn't going to be that great, wasn't going to be that determinant, but it just made me, just like, there was an intuition. There was like a little bits and pieces of information floating around that just, I couldn't quite understand it. And well, that's what it is, okay? That's an unconscious, abductive or inductive inference that makes you feel weird. Women are great at it. They are fantastic at it. That's why people talk about women's intuition all the time. Yeah, that, women have this great intuition. No, they're just more in touch with their feelings. Because what happens is a lot of times, see, men are taught to ignore their feelings, which I think is a mistake. You should acknowledge your feelings, not allow your feelings to dictate your actions, but not ignore them, see? But women are much more emotive creatures. They are ruled by their emotions. And because they are ruled by their emotions, a lot of times when they get an intuition that is an unconscious abductive inference that they might not be able to articulate, but that it comes to them like a feeling, they intuit X and they're right, you see? Because they are allowing their feeling to float up to their conscious level, because they do that all the time. And they do that all the time, of course, because it has to do with the fact that women are looking after children. They have evolved to be very emotive and to pay attention to the emotional temperature of their own children and also of their social environment. And that's why they are more emotional, but that's why also they have this women's intuition. It's a very healthy thing, okay? It's a very healthy thing, and you should develop it. When you have that feeling, that intuition, you shouldn't just ignore it. Don't ignore it. On the contrary, examine it, look at it. Try to separate your fear, which will be a natural component of it. Separate your fear and also separate your hope, because a lot of times hope clouds your judgment. Separate those emotions and try to assess your intuition as to why it's feeling that way. Now, what I usually do, the question originally that Amin asked was, when are you supposed to be logical and when are you supposed to be intuitive? When are you supposed to be a critical thinker and when are you supposed to follow your gut? And I have the coin toss test. Simple as that. When I have a decision, and I arrive at that decision logically, but I have a feeling, maybe fear, maybe whatever, I have this intuitive notion that might be different from my logical decision. And what I do is I take a coin and I say, heads, the logical decision, tails, the intuitive decision. Okay? You know, heads one way and tails the other way. And I flip the coin. And whatever the outcome is, if it's one way and I'm like, good, then I do that. But if it's the other way, and I say, oh, well, maybe I'll do 2 out of 3, then I know that that decision is the wrong one. You see? Suppose there's a path. I arrive at a fork in the road. There's a left turn and a right turn. And so on my coin, you know, I've got a silver dollar. Heads to the right, tails to the left. I flip the coin and it adds heads. Oh, that's the right. Okay, let's go right. And I go right. And I don't even think about it. I'm just like, okay, go right. But suppose I flip the coin and it lands tails, which is the left. And I look at that and I look at the left-hand road and I look at the coin again and I say, well, let's do 2 out of 3. That's when I know that the left road is going to be the wrong road. You see? Because even though logically I might say that the left and the right road are equally good, if that intuition makes me want to do a 2 out of 3 on the coins, that's when I know. That's when I know. You see? That's the test that I personally use. I'm not kidding. I do this all the time, really. You know, either with a coin or a dice or whatever. You know, whatever can, you know, has a 50% odds chance of either direction. Yeah, I do that. Okay. Well, 6-sided dice, you have to assign, you know, odds and evens or 1 to 3 and 4 to 6, but you know what I mean. I always do that when I'm unsure, and it's remarkable. It's really remarkable because it really does save you, because a lot of times your unconscious knows things that your conscious mind is not quite aware of. Okay, and here comes the point of where logic fails. Okay, when does logic fail? Donald Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense, he's a very, very capable man. He's an evil fucker, that's for sure. But a very, very capable individual and a very, very good bureaucrat, and just an all around, just a capable guy. I mean, a very smart man. And he had a notion that there were 2 kinds of unknowns. There's the known unknown and the unknown unknowns. And this is a really interesting notion. I was talking to you before about Chinese history, right? Okay, so before I read this book, The Third Revolution, well, I've read the intro and the conclusion, a few bits in the middle. I haven't really finished it, but you know what I'm saying? Before I got this book, I actually didn't know that much about Chinese history. And I didn't quite know what was going on in China. But what had happened was that I had sort of like a blind spot in my imagination insofar as China, insofar as my historical knowledge. I mean, like for instance, in Russian history, I know it real well from top to bottom, okay? Especially 20th century Russian history, especially Soviet history. I studied that. That was, my thesis was on the provisional governments of Russia. I mean, I know about this shit, right? But China, not so much. I mean, I knew that there had been the revolution in 49 and the Cultural Revolution, but I was very vague about it. And yeah, Tiananmen Square in 89 because I saw it on TV. But in general, I was sort of like ignorant, okay? And I hadn't really realized how ignorant I was of Chinese history. Even though, like I said before, that I'd studied the Mongol history, but that was, 12th, 13th, and 14th century, not 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century, or the 20th century, In 20th century, I knew a little bit. Oh yeah, and I also knew that Puyi had been the last emperor because of the stupid movie, but I didn't really know much more about that than that. I mean, I didn't know shit, but I didn't realize it. You see? For instance, I'm aware that I don't know much about French history between Napoleon Bonaparte and Napoleon III. That era is sort of like vague, but I know it's sort of like vague. I know that bit of history, that chunk of history, I'm sort of like not too clear. And I'm not too clear about the Franco-German War, in the later 19th century. I'm rather vague. I know Bismarck, a little bit, but I'm kind of vague, but I know that I do not know that. That is a known unknown, okay? But Chinese history, I realized with a bit of a shock, it was an unknown unknown. I did not realize that I did not know. Now, this is a key issue because a lot of times when you are thinking, when you are making inferences, whether they be deductive, inductive, or abductive, you want to know as much as possible or know the shape of that thing that you do not know. Know more or less what it is that you're ignorant of insofar as information, data, what have you. Because see, your critical thinking will be fucked over because of the things that you don't know that you do not realize you do not know. Have you noticed that guys who are really, really smart, really, really knowledgeable, they're the most humble? Yeah, because they understand how much they are ignorant of. And because they understand how ignorant they are much more careful. And because they are much more careful, their critical thinking skills are much better and their conclusions are consistently superior. Conclusions superior in a qualitative and quantitative sense. That is, they are more accurate more often. Because they know that they don't know shit. And they try to reduce the first part of that, they try to reduce the adjective, the unknown part of the unknowns. You see what I'm saying? They try to know all of the unknowns. Try to realize, this area here, I don't know. And I can leave it unknown because, there's a limited number of hours in the day. You can't study everything, but it's smart to realize the areas that you are unfamiliar with, that you do not know, that you are not competent in. Like for instance, in my own case, I'm a writer, for instance, and I never really learned about printing, about how do they manufacture a book? No idea, but I know that I don't know. See? And so if something were ever to pop up in that regard that might influence my ability as a writer or whatever, then I'd have to learn that. But you see the point I'm trying to make is that, see, I'm aware of the things that are unknown. When you don't know what you don't know, when there are unknown unknowns, that's when logic fails because you start making inferences without realizing that there are these huge pools of knowledge that you are unfamiliar with, these huge pools of data that can conceivably influence your thinking. And because you don't know the shape of this ignorance of yours, you don't even realize it's just a blind spot, that's when logic fails. That's when you make the wrong decisions on a critical level. You see? Yeah. That's one way that logic fails. The other way that logic fails is that a lot of times, like I said before, you confuse what is an inductive or abductive inference with a deductive inference or with a fact. Like I said before, when you are so married to the idea that swans are white that you refuse to accept a black swan, even if it's standing right there in front of you, okay? Because the notion that swans are all white, that is an inductive inference. It's not a fact. It's not a deductive inference. Because a deductive inference, for all intents and purposes, is a fact. Because deductive inference, the conclusion flows from the premises. All men are mortal, that's a fact. Socrates was a man, that's a fact. Ergo, Socrates was mortal. Those are facts that lead to that conclusion. There's no question about it. But see, most of your thinking, the vast majority of your thinking is going to be inductive or abductive. It's rarely deductive. It's rarely a solid fact. See? And you're holding on to an inductive or abductive conclusion and thinking that it is the result of facts, or it is in fact a fact. Sorry about that. But that is where logic fails, because what's happening is that you confuse the different kinds of inference, and therefore you arrive at dogma. All swans are white, period. Fuck that black swan. I say that they're all white because that's how it is. It's the truth. They're all white. What the fuck are you arguing with me about? They are all white, and I don't care if you bring a flock of black swans. I am telling you that all swans are white. What the fuck is that? That's dogma. That's dogma. That's an inability to reassess what you believe, recognize the new data, and integrate that new data. Because ultimately, what's going on here is that what would be logical to say is, all swans are white. Holy shit, there are some black swans here in Australia? In Europe, all swans are white. In Australia, there are white swans and black swans. Done. See, there you have, assimilated this new data point. And it's not a loss of face, but what happens is a lot of times guys especially, men, we come to a conclusion, and it might be the correct conclusion at the time or correct conclusion with the data that was known at the time. But times change, data changes, and they are unwilling to change their conclusion. Their identity gets wrapped up in the conclusion. That's where you fuck up. That's when logic fails. See? When it stops being something that you hold with indifference. Let me ask you something. You're repairing an engine, right? You're repairing an engine, and you have on your hand a 3/8 inch wrench, and you go to a lug nut there in the engine, right? And you put the wrench, yeah, and it doesn't fit. There's a lot of play, and you realize, oh, it's not a 3/8 inch wrench that I need. I need a 1/4 inch wrench, right? And do you throw a hissy fit? Do you get all upset about it? No, you just take the wrench, put it on the table, take the other wrench, the proper wrench, and use that, right? You don't have any problem. You don't like wrap up your identity. You don't have a freak out. You don't try to force the 3/8 inch wrench to unfasten the 1/4 inch nut or bolt or whatever, right? Of course, you wouldn't dream of that. You think it's stupid. Oh, why would you hold on emotionally to the wrong sized wrench, right? Exactly. The knowledge that you have, the conclusions that you have, they are tools. You drop them when they don't fit. When the data doesn't fit, when you realize that there's new information or that the information you had was erroneous, whatever the reason, you drop it and you pick up the new one. That's what you're supposed to do. But so many guys fail at this, and that's where logic fails, because it's not even that logic fails. It's men fail. Men fail because they get wrapped up. They think that they have to continue repeating what they thought before. You guys know me that, 10 weeks ago, I thought that this fucking COVID-19 was going to be the end of the fucking world. I was really fucking terrified. And then it turned out to be like a big old nothing burger. Yes, a lot of people died, and that's tragic. A lot more people died than usual, but it wasn't the pandemic of millions dead. I honestly thought that. The data proved me wrong. Do you see me saying now, oh yeah, but they're gonna die any day now. You wait, they're gonna die. No, of course not. I dropped it. I dropped it like a hot rock, and I was wrong. And I don't have a problem saying I was wrong. And if somebody comes up to me and says, you were wrong, I'd be like, yeah, I was totally wrong. Sorry. You know, you see the point. You have to have the humility to say that you're wrong. Okay. And again, that's not an issue of logic, really. It's our use of logic, that we fail to adapt and change when the facts change, when new information arrives. See? Now, when does intuition fail? Well, that's interesting. Intuition fails because of fallacies and biases. See, human beings have a bunch of biases. You can look them up. Just Google, typical biases, and a whole bunch, the hot hand fallacy, the sunk cost fallacy, and, all kinds of fallacies that, how can I put it, that we human beings have evolved to have. There's a great book called Thinking Fast and Slow by a guy called Kahneman. I forget his first name. He was a Nobel laureate. Thinking Fast and Slow. I recommend you read it. It's a very good book. And it talks about fallacies and biases. And it's very natural. It's very natural to have fallacies and biases. It's very natural to fall for them. A sunk cost fallacy, for instance, is a typical one. Sunk cost fallacy is basically, you go to a casino and you bet on red, for instance, and you lose. And so you say, well, I'm gonna bet on red again because, I lost so much money and I want to recover it. And so you bet twice the amount that you bet before on red and you lose again. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm gonna bet some more on red again to recover, and you keep on doubling down, throwing good money after bad, and you keep losing, okay? And well, you're gonna say, well, in the roulette table, red and black, eventually it's gonna be red. Yeah, sure, but you can go broke before that happens, see? Because of course, there is a 50-50 chance that red or black will pop up, or slightly less because of the house numbers, but it could be that you have a bad streak and you wind up going broke. That's the sunk cost fallacy of throwing good money after bad, of assuming something will turn around at the next go of the wheel. That doesn't always happen. Another bias, for instance, is the hot hand bias or the hot hand fallacy. It comes from basketball. That, all of a sudden one player, he sinks several baskets, right? He throws the ball several times and hits the hoop, sometimes like outrageous shots, and keeps on dunking, right? Or swishing. And what happens is that the other teammates start feeding him the ball because he's got a quote unquote hot hand. And no, that's not it. It's not that he has a hot hand. It's just a natural issue of chance. And sometimes you'll have a series of positive outcomes in any stretch of chance. And the fact that he's getting balls fed to him by his other teammates will increase the likelihood that he has more points, but it doesn't mean that he's any better than the other guys. It's just a bias, okay? It's a fallacy. Intuitions fail because of fallacies and biases, because we allow our thinking to fall into modes of thought that we human beings have ingrained in us for various evolutionary reasons. For instance, the sunk cost fallacy. It comes from parents' investment in children, especially small children. They will do whatever is possible to have the kid survive. And they will sacrifice more and more and more to have the kid survive. That's where it comes from. Were it not the case, children would die. And so that's why parents tend to fall into the fallacy of giving their kids more and more and more and more in order for the kid to live and flourish. Now, this behavior, which is advantageous to children, and it gives a certain percentage more likelihood that children will survive and therefore reproduce, and therefore this notion of giving more to children will endure through time, that creates the sunk cost fallacy that people apply in other areas of life, different from child rearing. Because in child rearing, yeah, if you do invest more and double down in your investment, you're going to have a more successful offspring. But in other things, no. You see? And that's where the fallacy comes from. Yeah, you see what I'm saying, what I'm driving at, okay? I just want to make sure that, yeah, you guys are watching this, okay? And the other way that intuition fails is conspiracy theories, okay? Now, I'm very, very afraid of conspiracy theories, and because I recognize that a lot of times it's very comforting to fall into a conspiracy theory. Now, a conspiracy theory is basically an explanation of an event or a series of events that involves hidden motives of people that are not visible. Okay, the most famous one is the 9/11 truthers, who think that 9/11 was an inside job. It wasn't. It wasn't. It's a ridiculous notion. It wasn't a ridiculous notion, and I can tell you that very easily because there are very few people in life who can keep a secret. Okay. If that really were a conspiracy of some sort to control demolition, some building or other, it would have come out. It would have come out because it would have required hundreds of people to make it happen. And they all would have had to keep quiet or else be bumped off and killed somehow. And not only them killed, but also their family members and shit would have had to be killed off so that, you know, nobody ever heard about it. It's absurd. It requires too much of an explanation, but a lot of times we fall into it because it comforts us. You see? Because a lot of times we don't understand what's going on. And so, and this is where intuition fails. See, sometimes we do not understand why something happens. And because of it, we fall for a conspiracy theory as an explanation for this thing that we do not understand why it happened or how it could have happened. Think about that. Because that's exactly what happened to primitive people in the past when they would see things that they could not explain. When the sun would cross the sky, the ancient people would say, oh yeah, that's because it's the chariot wheel of some god who's riding his horses so fast that the chariot wheel is burning brightly, and that's the sun. That's a ridiculous notion, of course, but it's the same thing. It's a complicated explanation to explain something that we don't really understand. I mean, today we understand perfectly well that the Earth spins on its axis and floats around the sun, right, in orbit. Okay, the moon orbits the Earth, and the Earth and moon together orbit rather around the sun, and that's why, from our relative perspective, we seem to see that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, which is not the case, of course. What's happening is that the Earth is spinning, and we experience the different seasons as it goes around the sun and maintains the tilt of the axis of spinning of rotation of the Earth, right? That's why we get spring, summer, winter, fall. We understand all this, but in the past, people didn't. They didn't know this. And so because they didn't know it, they invented conspiracy theories. Of course, we don't call them conspiracy theories, we call them myths. And we think that they're so quaint, but they are exactly the same thing. And it's a failure of intuition. It's when we allow intuition to run away. You see? You see how dangerous it can be? Because it can lead you to conclusions that are completely wrong. That are completely wrong, but they are comforting. Because what happens is that human beings need an explanation for things. We need an explanation for things, and we want to feel that things are not at random, but that there is somebody guiding things. And this is a thing that it's a logical or it's a fallacy of human beings that is very deeply ingrained. It makes us very leery to think that things happen at random. The notion that some fucking loser, you know, some loser commie named Lee Harvey Oswald took a crappy Italian rifle and blew John F. Kennedy away with 3 shots in 3 seconds or whatever the fuck. We can't believe it. And so we come up with all kinds of random explanations, the grassy knoll and this and that and all kinds of crazy ass shit. We can't accept such a trivial, stupid explanation. But see, that's the truth of it, okay? But since we can't accept it, we come up with conspiracy theories. Oliver Stone made a very incredible movie based on a conspiracy theory. It's bullshit, yeah, but it's fun bullshit. Just like, you know, the myths of how, you know, the God rode his chariot across the sky and creates the sun. Yeah, it's a cool myth, you know. It's not true, but it's cool. You see, we can fall for this, and we have to be very, very careful. Okay, it's basically our imagination. That's what's going on. It's when intuition and imagination separate. Because you need to have imagination to have intuition. But there comes a point where your imagination starts wandering off and just fiddling around. And you have to know when to turn it off. See? You have to know when, okay, now I have an intuition, but over there, that part, that land, that area, that's make-believe. That's fantasy land. That's not real. You see? And how do you distinguish between the two? What's an intuition and what's imagination? Data, facts. For instance, when I first heard the whole 9/11 truther shit, right? I knew it was bullshit. I knew it was bullshit because I lived in New York City. I lived 3 blocks away from the World Trade Center. I used to live in Pearl Street in downtown Manhattan. 85 Pearl Street, that was my address. You can look it up. It's basically 3-4 blocks away from the site of the World Trade Center as the crow flies, right? And I used to walk that area all the time, right in front of them. I knew that building, the World Trade Center #7, I think, that collapsed, that everybody said that they had, it was like a controlled demolition or some shit like that, right? No way, no way, because I was there, okay? I used to live there. I used to know the routine of work in in downtown Manhattan, okay? Number one, if some team of demolition experts were gonna do something like that, I would have known about it. And number two, see, I never saw this, but my mother and my stepfather lived in Las Vegas for a while. And they told me about some casino that they demolished a while back. I forget when. And they said that they cordoned off the place and they were fucking around for weeks before they finally brought down the building. It wasn't like they could just slip in and slip out, okay? It was like a whole production, which makes sense. You're handling dynamite. It's fucking dangerous, right? You want to make sure that you're not doing anything stupid, because an accident happens all the time. You think that accidents don't happen with the CIA or whatever it is, whatever gremlin is supposed to have brought down the building? No, of course it happens all the time. And that's the point. That's more data that that you bring to the conspiracy theory and say, oh yeah, it's bullshit. It's just bullshit. And so that's my point. There was another conspiracy theory that that the Apollo missions never landed on the moon. That it's all make believe, that Stanley Kubrick filmed it all in a film studio in Los Angeles, right? And that's bullshit. And I saw a great video about it by a friend of mine, a guy called Collins, who did a video about it. And a couple of million people have watched it. And he explains in the video that he knows for a fact that they didn't fake the moon landing footage. Because he says, I don't know if they landed or not, but I know that they didn't fake the footage because they couldn't fake the footage. And he explains, because he's a photographer and a commercials director, he explains how he knows for a fact that all that footage is genuine, that there was no way to fake it, not in 1969 and 1970 when these missions flew. And he goes into some detail, and see, that's more facts, see? Conspiracy theories always die with facts. When you have to add more conspiracies in order to explain away the new facts, then you know you're on the wrong track rather. Then you know that you're fucking up, because you're trying to explain away the new data as opposed to integrating it. Like I explained before with the white swan and the black swan, you think that all swans are white, and then you see black swans, and then you say, oh, actually they're not black, they're white, but somebody dyed their feathers black, and that's why they look black. It's fucking crazy, right? I mean, it's just a fucking bird, right? It's a fucking bird that has that black feathers, and now you're saying that no, all swans are white, and that swan is black because some malevolent force dyed the feathers black. What the fuck is wrong with you, right? I mean, you see my point. See, when you have to make more explanations to hold on to theory, then you're fucked up. Yeah, you have to drop it. You have to realize that you're wrong. Okay. I mean, this is the point, and this is the thing that I find tragic, because a lot of times what happens is that people who sound very, very reasonable and very, very logical fall for this intuition trap of a conspiracy theory. And I love cool stories. I am amused by them. Like I said before, the Oliver Stone picture, JFK, I thought it was a fun picture. I thought it was great. I thought it was extremely well made and well directed, well acted. I thought it was nuts. But see, I can enjoy something and still consider it nuts. I can, hear about the story of the god who crossed the sky in his chariot and think it's a lovely story and know for a fact that it's not true. Yeah. And that's what you should do. Okay. If you hear some conspiracy theory, you know, just like indulge in and listen to it and fine, but right away poke holes and right away say to yourself, is this real? Can this possibly be real? Now, why am I bringing up and going on and on about conspiracy theories? Well, because like right now, and I want to pivot a little bit to what's been going on. Right now, we have this whole issue with two things that have been going on over the past 4 months, or actually longer. We had a whole Russiagate investigation with this guy, Robert Mueller, that lasted 3 years and was a big old nothing burger. I mean, it was literally nothing, literally nothing. There was nothing there because there wasn't. And the people claiming that there was all the proof in the world, well, when their testimony was finally revealed, their secret testimony was finally revealed, it turned out that they didn't know shit, that it was just all lies, all of it. They were lying. They were lying their ass off insofar as the Mueller report. And then they went and impeached Donald Trump. Why did they impeach him? Because of some random conversation with the fucking Ukrainian president where there was absolutely no quid pro quo? And they impeached him, and what happened? Nothing. Not because there wasn't anything there. And everybody in the left, everybody in the deep state, everybody was noticing that the economy was doing fucking great. The economy is doing absolutely great. And this shit from China emerged. And what do? They locked down the entire United States, the entire world, and they totally crashed the American economy. They crashed it. It's like they took a Ferrari that was going at 120 miles an hour and gave it a hard right turn right into a fucking brick wall. Bam. The whole thing just kaflooey. 33 million unemployed. 33 fucking million people unemployed, man. Motherfucker. Yeah? Thousands, hundreds of thousands of businesses gone. The livelihoods of thousands, millions of people gone. They crashed the economy. To what? What was the point of it? To make Trump look bad? It didn't work. And now some drug addicted, petty criminal who was convicted of breaking into a pregnant woman's home and holding a gun to her pregnant belly while he robbed her place, a drug addict, a bottom of the barrel porn actor who was high as a kite when he was arrested. And in his arrest, yeah, a bunch of cops who were white, Asian, and Hispanic. I mean, they were fucking United Colors of Benetton, motherfucker. Yeah, they killed him. Yeah, they did. I mean, come on, they killed him. They leaned on his throat. Yeah, and if he had a heart attack because of that or whatever the cause it was, it killed him. They killed him. Yeah. You want to say it was excessive force? It was. I personally think it was manslaughter. I don't think that they had any intention of killing the guy. I think that they were just like, oh, this fucker is high as a kite, and I'm just gonna keep him down until we can get this fucker out of here. And, you know, it went a little bit too long and he died. And it's a tragedy. Yeah. And it's a tragedy, but not that big of a tragedy because the guy was a piece of shit. Okay. I mean, let's call it a spade a spade. The guy was a piece of shit. But this guy who was a piece of shit, and all of a sudden, across the entire United States at the exact same time, every fucking city starts rioting. Every fucking city starts rioting, and everybody's blaming it all on Trump. And Trump is a fascist and dictator, and they are going out of their way to create as much violence and wreak as much havoc as possible, so that the only thing to do is to put the military out on the streets and smother this shit. And of course, that would make Trump look like a fucking dictator. And so you ask yourself, you know, what's going on here? Okay. I mean, those are the facts. We have had 4 stages of this: the Mueller investigation, the impeachment, the COVID-19 lockdown, which was so much bullshit and so despicable. Those fucking doctors, 1,200 doctors last week signed a letter saying that, you know, getting together to, you know, to protest against racism is fine, but if you get together to protest against lockdown, that's wrong. What the ever living motherfucking fuck, you cocksucking faggots. Yeah? But that's what's going on there, you know? I mean, these guys are fucking faggots. I despise them because they are fucking hypocrites. They are, you know, it's a disaster. But anyway, you look at all that's going on and you say to yourself, from the outside, it looks as if a bunch of people, maybe acting in concert, are trying to bring down the Trump administration, trying to make sure that it loses in November, and that they're terrified that Trump will win in November. And it seems that they are doing everything in their power to stop the Trump administration, up to and including overthrowing him somehow. And they were pushing shit like mail-in ballots, which opened the door wide open for mass fraud, electoral fraud. It was so bad that in fucking New Jersey, with the mail-in ballots, the Democrat candidate said that they had to do the election all over again because it was so fraudulent. Everybody knows that these fucking mail-in ballots is just a fraud, but they want it. Why do they want it? Because all these people, there is a group of people, a cabal of people, who want to overthrow Trump, and they don't care how they do it. And they are so evil and nasty that they will ally themselves with anybody, including Antifa, including Black Lives Matter, to make this happen. And they will pervert scientists and doctors into destroying the American economy with an idiotic lockdown that did not work, that on the contrary caused much more suffering because of the lockdown, a lot of people who had other diseases, heart conditions, cancer, diabetes, whatnot, they were not able to get the medical care that they needed, and they probably died earlier than they should have, or they died altogether when they could have been saved. Or also all the suicides of the people who have lost their jobs or lost their businesses that they've spent their entire working lives doing. And because of that loss of income, they didn't know what to do. They were at their wits' end and they killed themselves. And that happens. It's been demonstrated that each percentage point of unemployment in the United States results in X number of suicides. I forget the data, and the data is anyway out of date because it was from back in 1982, I believe, that they made the study, and I don't know what the current data is. It doesn't matter. That point is that, see, more unemployment means more suicides, more misery, more spousal abuse in both directions, men against women and women against men. Okay, it's women are not these angels. Everybody knows that. Okay, and more often than not, it's two times out of three, it's the woman who will start a physical altercation with her spouse, or a partner. But going back to this issue, they did all of this to hurt Trump. They are willing to do anything to hurt Trump. I personally despise Trump, okay? The notion that I have to be defending the son of a bitch just irks me to no end. I despise the fucker. I think he's a weakling. I mean, it's amusing that he's a used car salesman who's really good at trolling. That's amusing. But the fact is, I despise him because he's a weakling. He doesn't know how to put on he doesn't have balls. And fuck you if you say that he's like a big time businessman. No, he's a fucking failure. He inherited a boatload of money from his old man the old man was tough as nails, right? But Trump, he's a fucking weakling. He's a fucking weakling who coasted on his old man's money. And, and this thing here, he should have had troops on the streets cracking skulls the first fucking day. And fuck you if you think that it's authoritarian. He should have put law and order, because you can't have people just burning up cities. No way, you shouldn't allow that. But he did, because he's weak. He's just a pussy. I'm sorry. And if you're a Trump supporter and don't like me because of it, you're free to unsubscribe. I feel that strongly about it because all the evidence is there. I take my cue from Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter and I see eye to eye, okay? And she just despises Trump for the reasons that I have outlined, because she recognizes that he's weak. Paradoxically, his very weakness and his very inability to act decisively and strongly to stop this, and his allowing these people to go atomic dumpster fire on the whole fucking country, is actually proving to be beneficial to himself, because people are more horrified of these fuckers than ever before and want nothing to do with them. And the Democrats are going to take the loss of their lives. And if you tell me that, oh yeah, that's part of Trump's plan, it's 4D chess, again, that's a conspiracy theory. You're adding on an explanation when the simpler explanation that Trump is weak and vacillating and doesn't know what to do, that's the more accurate one, right? But you're adding on explanation, oh, it's 4D chess. It's not 4D chess. He's just a pussy who got lucky. The guy is lucky, but he's not clever, okay? He's a good salesman, an excellent salesman. And he tells his audience what the audience wants to hear, and he nails that bell every fucking single time. That's why his rallies are so popular, because he says what people want to hear. Does he do what people want to be done? No, he does not, because he's weak. Okay? If he were strong, there would never have been a Mueller report. There never would have been impeachment. And this COVID-19 lockdown never would have happened. A strong leader wouldn't have allowed it. No. The sensible approach would have been, okay, we'll do social distancing and we'll see how it goes there. Everybody, stand 6 feet away from each other and we'll see how it goes with the hospital. But life goes on, and we just have to make sure that if any area there's a hot spot, that we put resources in that hot spot, but the economy has to keep on going, or else we're going to die and go broke. We can't let that happen, right? That's what a strong leader would have done. Okay, the guy's weak. But anyway, leaving that all aside, you see, all of these incidents, these 4 incidents that I've outlined that have happened over the past, 4 years, basically. The Mueller report, the impeachment, COVID-19 overreaction lockdown, and now the rioting and looting. Now, all of this, if you look at it from an abductive inference point of view, you can say it seems to lead to the conclusion that somebody or a group of people is behind this, trying to orchestrate it. That's an abductive inference. The difference between an abductive inference and a conspiracy theory is that, see, the abductive inference, you have to be able to prove it. You have to take that hypothesis and try to prove it. Whereas a conspiracy theory, you just add more layers. That's the difference. And that's why it's very important to never confuse the two. With an abductive inference, you can start looking at people and say, oh, okay, these politicians here would benefit from this. That's very clear. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the Democratic establishment. They benefit, they get more money, they get more power. Who benefits? Cui bono? That's the question to ask. And so that's how you distinguish between one and the other. A final note on the issue of logic, intuition, and critical thinking. See, never be afraid of the truth, no matter how unpleasant. A lot of times we are afraid of the truth because we are holding on to our beliefs too tight. And the reason we hold on to our beliefs too tight is that sometimes we don't have anything to believe in, okay? We don't have God anymore. We don't have a sense that there are fellow human beings who will look after us and take care of us. We feel isolated and alone. And so because of it, we hold on to our beliefs of quotidian things, and we refuse to let them go. They become our religion. They soothe us. And that's why sometimes people, and perhaps you, hold on to a belief that's just not true. That's false. Like, the conspiracy theory that, the Apollo astronauts never landed on the moon. It's ridiculous. There's plenty of proof that they did land on the moon, and no evidence at all that they did not. But people hold on to it because it gives them something to believe in. Okay? You have to be very alert that you never fall into that habit of believing, no, all swans are white, and any black swan, it's a lie. It's rumor, myth, it's not true. And if you see one, you say, oh no, somebody painted them black and that's why they're black, but they're white. No, they're not. You got to look at the new facts and integrate them. One of the advantages that I have, or not advantages, strengths that I have, is that I am very, very willing to drop any belief that I have when I see evidence that proves me wrong. Because from experience, I've realized it's a lot easier for me to drop an erroneous belief than to hold on to it. I hold on to it, and a lot of times I alienate people. I wind up saying and doing stupid shit, embarrassing shit, saying things that are just ridiculous and absurd, trying to hold on to something that's not true. And what's the point of it? Why? Why am I bothering? Okay. And I learned this really early. I'm right now, as I'm talking to you, I don't quite recall when it was that I learned this, that I learned that it was pointless to hold on to erroneous beliefs. But that's the case. I no longer hold on to any erroneous belief. I drop it the instant I realize it's wrong. And I don't have a problem. And I've noticed too, and I did a video about this, that see, when you instantly admit you're wrong, the second you realize you're wrong, your enemies have nowhere to go. That's truth. See, I say to you, 2 + 2 is 5. And you say, no, it's 4. It's 2 + 2 is 4. It's 2 + 2 is 4. I'm like, fuck you. It's 2 + 2 is 5. It's 5. It's 5. I tell you. And then finally, I pick up a calculator and put 2 + 2 is, ooh, it's 4. Holy shit. Ooh, I was wrong. And I say, oh, you know what? You were right. I was wrong. It is 4. Where do you go with that? Or the person who's attacking me before, because I'm admitting you're right. Dude, you were right. I thought that 2 + 2 is 5, but man, I plugged in the calculator. I looked it up. 2 + 2 is indeed 4. I was wrong. You're right. I'm sorry. Where does my opponent go at that moment? Nowhere. What's he going to say? Yeah, you're darn tootin'. You were wrong. You're wrong. Yeah, I said I'm wrong, and I'm sorry. I was wrong. You see my point? If you admit you're wrong, your enemies, your opponents have nowhere to go. It's not agreeing with them, okay? That's not the point. That's very different. You have to hold your beliefs as you see fit. No, you never agree with them. You never capitulate to them. No. But when you realize that you are wrong about something X, you say so. It could be, for instance, that you say 2 + 2 is 5, and they're like saying 2 + 2 is 6. And you argue back and forth, and they say it's 6, and you say it's 5, and you argue for like the longest time, and then finally, in a moment of calm and clarity, you pick up your calculator, plug in 2 + 2, and it turns out to be 4, and then you say to the guy who says 2 + 2 is 6, you say, you know something else? I realize, yeah, I was wrong. It's not 2 + 2 is 5. It's 2 + 2 is 4. That's the truth. And you see, again, you leave your enemy in a very difficult position, because see, you recognize that you're wrong, but you go to the 2 + 2 is 4, a third position, different from his and different from your previous one. And where does he go? Well, how does he look? You're showing that you're willing to adapt or change your beliefs, rather, because you realize that you were wrong before, but now you have the correct answer. And his unwillingness to examine his belief makes him look even more foolish. You see? So it's always win-win. Never change your mind, or rather adopt the beliefs of others. No, follow your own thinking, but always be willing to change your mind, irrespective of what other people say or believe. It could be that you're always out of step with all the people around you, but if you always follow the truth that you believe based on the information that you have, truth that you arrive at deductively, inductively, or by abductive inference, well, if you do that, you always follow what you believe to be the truth and see to be the truth with the facts that you have available to you, you're never going to go wrong. And you might always be out of step in the short term. In the long run, you'll be fine. And you'll laugh when other people start falling in line with what you believe. Because what you believe, you are consciously trying to believe those things that are true. See my point? Yeah. That's why you want to be very careful with your critical thinking, very careful with your intuitions. Listen to your intuitions. Don't reject them just because they're emotive. Just because they originate with your emotions doesn't mean that they're wrong. A lot of times they are right. And always in your critical thinking, be aware of that which you do not know. And you'll be fine. Okay, so that is my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, let's start with some questions. Let's see some hands in the air, and let me go to the questions box and see what people have said. Let me see here. Let me see. Paul Smith said, I just want to ask, sorry about this, but I don't have a producer, so. Chris O has a good question. Let me bring in Chris O. Chris O, where are you? There you are. Chris O has a real good question. Chris O, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. How are you, Coach?
I'm doing excellently, actually.
And thank you for the summary of the current state of events. You mentioned about the 4 points that really capsulize everything that's happening right now.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. What do you think of all this shit?
As you told me personally last week, that anything is possible.
Yeah, anything is possible. Yeah, that's why I didn't really want to do like a devoted broadcast about this stuff. I want to touch upon it tangentially because we still don't know how this is going to play out. But anyway, you had a great question. Why don't you hit us with it, please?
And the question is what to do with all that theoretical knowledge that you've just given us in practice. When we are out and about and we have to talk to someone and someone's forcing themselves to talk to us, and we know that they're illogical for whatever reason you mentioned, and we don't agree with their views, and we know that if we express our views, they will be very heated. What to do? Keep a mouth shut, use some dodging strategies. I mean, this is serious stuff because things are getting very heated, and whether it's at work, at school, or even with family members, it's sometimes scary to express one's point of view, given the
Yes.
representation.
Yes. My thinking is pick your battles wisely. Simple as that. Okay. When you come across an illogical person, like a foaming at the mouth idiot, right? I mean, some guy who's like, oh, Black Lives Matter, your whiteness is doing this or that or whatever the fuck. You got to ask yourself: is fighting with this person, having an argument with this person, is this gonna advance my cause, my objectives? Because see, you can wind up spending an awful lot of emotional energy on people who do not matter. Okay, and I think that happens all the time. It used to happen to me a lot. I used to, when I was young, when I was in my 20s, I remember the whole issue of abortion for me was just like on my mind so heavily, right? Because I had an eye-opening conversation with a philosophy professor who was pro-choice. And he was this big brain philosophy professor, a guy called Walter Sinnott Armstrong. He was at the time, he was at Dartmouth. Now he's some big chair at Duke University. He was a moral philosopher and whatnot, very big brain, moral philosopher. And he was like all in favor of abortion. But he himself said that in philosophy, they had yet to come up with foolproof arguments in favor of abortion. But he said that was the goal. I thought to myself, if they don't have foolproof arguments in favor of abortion with all this brain power being applied to it, then maybe abortion is wrong. And that was the thing. And so I wound up arguing with a whole bunch of people pointlessly. And what happened was a lot of people had knee-jerk reaction in favor of abortion and some knee-jerk reaction against abortion. But you see, I would argue pointlessly with people and it would not advance my interests. And not only that, it would sometimes antagonize people pointlessly, needlessly. And so I learned a lot from that, which is basically pick your battles wisely. Know why you are going to fight somebody. Have a clear notion that I'm going to fight this person so that I can advance my interests. And sometimes it's extremely difficult to ignore stupid and illogical people. But it's sort of like there's a saying, never get in the mud to wrestle with a pig. You'll only get dirty and the pig will enjoy it.
Yes.
It's a great saying, and it really captures the whole essence of it. You'll only get dirty and the pig is going to enjoy it. You will gain nothing.
But it seems that there are more and more pigs these days, and the mud is getting deeper and dirtier. It's getting to a point where guys want to just bail. I mean, you've mentioned your past videos. If you want to meet women, go to Eastern Europe. If you want to try different, work environment, go to Africa. I mean, it's getting to a point where guys want to leave the West in mass.
Yes.
There's no hope, not in a short-term horizon for anything. So why even stay here? For those who can.
Yeah, that's very true. And I'll tell you a story. I was talking to a friend of mine. I'm not going to mention who it is, just a guy I know very well. And he lives in New York. He works for a big corporate, like a bank. Okay. And this guy, his grandparents are from Eastern Europe, but his parents are American, and he supports his parents, and he loves them very much, and he's a single guy, and he's like in his mid-30s. He doesn't have a woman yet. He had a very serious girlfriend, but she was like a typical Western girl, and she was fucked up in the head, all kinds of anxiety issues, and finally just fell apart, right? I mean, they were all going to get married and shit, but when he was dating her, he was telling me, about the situation, and I could tell that he wasn't really convinced, right? And so anyway, they wound up breaking up and stuff like that. And so I was talking to him yesterday, as a matter of fact. It was a long conversation. It was like 3 hours. It was very interesting, 2 hours, but it was a very important conversation for him. I could sense how important it was for him, because he was really at his wit's end. He had gone to some at his company at some HR human resources meeting, where it was basically a struggle session. That they had done this whole thing. What are we going to do to fight racism? And what are you doing to fight racism? And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's involved in a line of work of mergers and acquisitions where it's just fucking cutthroat. He had this great line that he said to me. He said, that some guy said, we have to show that we care for black people. And he said to me, this buddy of mine said to me, don't tell me you care. You're paid not to care, which is absolutely true, because in these mergers and acquisitions, they fire people and ruin people's lives and strip them of their pension funds and all kinds of dirty ass shit. And that's what they do. That's their job. They're fucking evil barracudas, right? And they're going all wishy-washy with this bullshit. And he was saying, I'm sick and tired of it. And he was saying, he basically, he needed me to articulate what he should do. And I told him, why don't you split to Eastern Europe? You can go to Eastern Europe, bring your parents along, and bring some other extended family that he has that's also from Eastern Europe. Set yourself up there. You'd be a big fish in a little pond. You could get plugged into the social environment there. And through that, in the business environment, you'd get a big social life. You'd meet a lot of people, and potentially you'd meet like a nice, sane girl. After a couple of years of working there and being part of the milieu, you'd naturally, at some cocktail party or some dinner party or whatever, you'd wind up meeting some nice girl who wants to settle down and have a bunch of kids and be happy, right? And he was saying, yeah, that's basically it. And yeah, and so a lot of guys are thinking of leaving, and I think that it's a wise decision.
So is this the short-term solution, and an exodus of the most capable and sane males?
Well, let me ask you something. If you know that it's going to be a shit show for the next 10 years because of this COVID-19 business, right? Because this crashed the economy and there's no coming back from this shit. Whatever the fucking jobs report said last Friday, this shit is going to take years to recover from this shit show, right? Well, if things are going to be a shit show, if they're going to have these struggle sessions, if it's going to be like fucking the Cultural Revolution in China, why the fuck would you stay? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, yeah, it's historically short term, 20 years, 30 years maybe. But in terms of a man's lifetime, it's his lifetime. It's his best years. Why would he throw them away in a society that doesn't value him? I mean, I hate to say it, but this is the truth.
Perhaps in the future video, you can dive into this, preparing for the reaction of other countries. I mean, you mentioned 3 books about 3 men who represent the 3 most, let's say, aggressive. Yeah. How will they exploit the current situation? But perhaps on a kind of a macro level, you can give some practical advice on how to deal with people that you cannot escape. I mean, I'll give you one example. I mean, this summer, I'm hoping to sign up for a little trip. I've been locked down at home for months, like everybody else, and I'm hoping, I want an organized trip.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm afraid that since I won't know the people who will join, it's supposed to be a dozen or so people, I might be entering a group of woke individuals with whom I'll have to spend weeks, at least a few days, but maybe in weeks of time. And so do I keep my mouth shut? Do I just boil over or try not to boil over? I mean, how to deal with enclosed situations in the office, at school, or it's in random where you can't.
Okay, that's a good question. That's a real good question. I say what you're saying. You're in an enclosed environment right now, and how to deal with that shit right now. Okay, no problem. I once heard this Jewish guy say something really smart. He said, keep your head down, your spirits up, your papers in order, and your money in cash. That's words to live life. You're involved in a situation like that where you're stuck with people who may or may not be woke. You just keep your head down. You just keep your mouth shut. Okay. And over time, you're going to be able to suss out, who's like really woke and who's just like, this is so much bullshit. And you gravitate more towards the guys who think like you that it's so much bullshit. Okay. And what'll happen is that very naturally, you will know who thinks that it's bullshit because there will be guys who do not have the self-control to keep their mouth shut, especially in a small group. The smaller the group, the more likely they are to say, no, this is bullshit, okay? Because it is bullshit, and it's outrageous bullshit. And because of that, these guys who think that it's so much bullshit, you'll recognize them and you can sidle up to them, be on their side. But you always want to play the game of like letting people think of you whatever they want to project onto you. David Bowie, the singer, was great at this. David Bowie rarely actually talked. And when he talked, it was all like kind of bullshitty and nothing very specific. And he allowed people to project onto him what they thought. Okay? And that's a very powerful skill. It's a skill that I myself have never really mastered, and I should, because it's very, very useful to allow other people to project onto you what they think that you think. And you keep your own thoughts to yourself and think and do whatever you please. You see what I mean?
Yes, coach. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's the best approach. That's the only pragmatic approach that you can take, because if you fight these people frontally, they will eat you alive, because there are enough people scared of them that the people who are scared of them will join them in attacking you. They'll attack you so that they themselves will not be the object of attack later on. You see, that's what's going on.
For a bit of optimism in all this, do you foresee how this will end? I mean, how will they cannibalize themselves? How will they run out of steam and money eventually burn or die or change their views?
I think that the more overheated this shit gets, the faster it'll die. Okay. There's also a great advantage that they are looking more and more evil. I mean, flat out fucking evil day by day. And I think that that is actually good for the rest of us who are normal. Okay. Because people are saying, what the fuck is this? This is insane. These people are fucking nuts. I think also what's happening is that this is going to kill mainstream media. I mean, like the New York Times is dead. Nobody believes them. Nothing. Okay. And so the vast majority of people this is red pilling more people day by day. Yeah, that's what I think. It's red pilling people more and more every day. Yeah.
But
So
how to hold them to account? How to hold the people that are rioting, looting, or saying all these hypocritical things to account after the protests have died down? Will there be any repercussions?
I don't know. I don't think so. Look, life is great, but nobody said that life is going to be fair. Being alive, being conscious, being able to experience the world, it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. But nobody ever guaranteed that it would be fair. Okay? Sometimes, most times, life is incredibly unfair. The wicked get away with their wickedness, and good people suffer and die. It happens all the time. And you just have to, face that. And it's unpleasant and it goes against what we wish and hope for, but that's the truth. And it hurts, but you have to face it. The wicked get away with their wickedness many times. Of course, we don't want that to happen. We want them to be punished, righteously punished. Like these fucking hypocrites, like these goddamn doctors that I mentioned before, such fucking lying bastards. 1,200 of these fucking pieces of shit saying that, oh yeah, you can protest for this George Floyd guy, but don't you dare protest against the lockdown. Fuck you, cocksucker. these people, these 1,200 medical professionals, they'll probably just do fine. And that's so fucking unfair. And of course, it fills me with bile and bitterness. But that's the reality. That's more likely than not. If they are punished, thank the good Lord, right? But I'm not holding my breath. Yeah.
Thank you, Coach. I'm sure there are other people who have good questions. I look forward to next
Sorry
week.
about that, Chris. Yeah, Chris, Jesus Christ, I must have been so with you for so long that you were the one who said that I should take other callers. Thanks a lot, man. But it's great talking to you again. I'll talk to you soon.
Till next time.
Yeah, I saw Mr. Blue. Yeah, I was bad mouthing you, Mr. Blue. Yeah, because when I started the broadcast, you weren't around, and I'm insulted, Mr. Blue, because I think that you were just listening to some other webinar. God damn, you were cheating on me, Mr. Blue. Is that right or not?
I was trying to wake up and get out of bed.
Bullshit! Excuses. You were cheating on me. You know, with all the love that we shared, I thought we had a bond. I thought we had like. Have you been, brother?
No, I've been pretty good. I've been pretty good. So here's my question. Honestly, so my opinion is very few people really care about the blacks. I think otherwise people would be saying all the things that they're saying when they're killing each other in the ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of the situation is that the African Americans, particularly, are a product of artificial selection and democratic, these democratic games of continually incentivizing the dads to leave and the moms to, have more kids. And when you don't have a dad in the house and you don't respect authority, the police have to deal with this all the time. These situations occur.
Yep.
I guess my question is, everybody can say everything that they're saying now, but how will the African American community, will they ever get out of this cycle, or will this just be the same record being played with different names? And how do we, who are not African American or who are not, very liberal, playing these games, how do we not get stuck in this problem? And then, just like the African Americans on different levels, we're all kind of in our traps. How do we realize if we are in a trap, and how do we get out of it? Like, as a general question.
Okay, let me see if I understand you right. You're saying basically the African Americans, they don't really care about George Floyd, because if they really did, they'd care much more about all the blacks who are being murdered by other blacks, which is true. And when is this going to end insofar as that's concerned? Well, see, it's never going to end in the United States, because the black population is essentially a people who cannot be swallowed by the body politic, okay? In the sense that they cannot be assimilated. And you talk about assimilation and you think about the board or something like that, but in a very real sense, it's true. The black community cannot be assimilated, unlike other communities who have been assimilated. In the 19th century, it was the Swedes and Ukrainians and Italians and the Russians, and then into the 20th century, it was the Irish, and then the Indians and the Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, they all got assimilated. And you look at Asians, you look at South Asians, East Asians, South Asians, they are all assimilated in one way or another. They maintain their beliefs, their religious beliefs, their culture, their ceremonies and rituals and traditions and whatnot, but they are part of the mainstream, and they're going about their business, making money, doing this and that. They're doing fine. The African American community is not. It has been, 150 years since the end of the Civil War. If they haven't assimilated by this time, they're never going to assimilate. So this problem is going to be ongoing forever. Okay. I mean, like shit, like, you know, Swedes and Ukrainians and whatnot, they're all assimilated in the United States. They just disappeared. They just got absorbed by the board, right? And that's happening more and more with Asians. That's happening more and more with South Asians, right? When I say just Asians, I'm referring to East Asians, really. But it's also happening to South Asians, that they're just assimilating and just disappearing, which is sort of like what you want. I mean, you say on the one hand you want multiculturalism, but what you really want is like one people, okay? And the whole notion of an American melting pot, it works. It's only been in the last couple of decades that people have been against it and trying to highlight their identity. Why are they trying to highlight the identity? In order to cleave different identity groups so that they have more power, so that they can make people resentful. And it's worked. Look at the rioting going on. The rioting is just a product of resentment. And the looting and the stealing and all the rest of it has nothing to do with George Floyd. George Floyd is just a fucking excuse to go out and steal. It's fed on resentment, and it's never going away. And that's life. You're just going to have to figure out how to deal with this shit. There's no solution to it. The only solution possible would be to take either all of the people who are not black and remove them from the United States, or all the black people in the United States and remove them from the United States. Like apartheid, right? That's the only solution. And that ain't never going to happen, okay? Therefore, we're always going to have this racial animosity, because it's to the benefit of substantial portions of the political class. The political class and the oligarchs have a vested interest in having these different groups, different ethnic groups, fighting each other and hating one another. It's to their benefit. And so we're going to continue to see it. You know, it's tragic. I mean, it's not something that I think is a good thing. On the contrary, I personally grew up with the whole notion of the American melting pot, that you could, wherever you came from, you could just dive into the American pool and become an American and just assimilate, be part of the Borg, but happily, you know, not like scary, you know, Star Trek Next Generation shit, but like happy Borg. I'm like all happy and shiny and just having a good time. Yeah. I thought that that's the way it was. I grew up in Southern California in the 70s, in LA, the San Fernando Valley. And there were Asians, East Asians, there were South Asians, there were Jews, there were me, Hispanic, you know, my parents. I mean, shit, Gonzalo Lira, you don't get more beaner than that, right? And everybody was just happy. Everybody was doing their own shit. I would like bicycle with my friends and nobody gave a shit. Everybody had a good time. But, you know, there was a sense that everybody was an American, period. But it's to the benefit of people to create this racial divide. So, yeah, there's no solution to it. That's what I'm basically saying.
So you think it's, I mean, the net effect, right, of having you know, a group of people always on, you know, generationally on tax, being subsidized by tax dollars on the city, with, you know, with living, with crime, with prisons. This is somehow the net effect of this is sustainable, and it's benefiting a group of a class that makes sense.
Yeah, see, having an underclass benefits others, sure. Cheap labor on the one hand, and also instant political resentment that can be turned like a blowtorch in any direction you want. Yeah, that's how they use it, you know? I mean, that's what's going on. I mean, come on, how else do you look at it, you know? So yeah, it's a tragedy, but you know, life sucks. I'm sorry, that's the best answer I can give you, and there's no solution to this. In a practical sense, the only solution would be horrifying. You'd have to convince a substantial portion of people to expunge the groups that don't want to assimilate. And that would be like, that would make like the Third Reich look like a fucking picnic. You know what I'm talking about? It would be just
Yeah.
shocking. I can't even imagine it. Okay, that's the
Do you see at some point there being a political or economic will to change the incentives of of you know of the welfare state? If the incentives were changed, then this might be solved.
no, it goes too deep. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's as simple as that. I mean, from my point of view, it goes too deep. The resentment goes too deep, and there's no solution to it. Yeah. Sorry to be such a downer, Mr. Blue. Catch you next week.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Look forward to it. Take care. I want to get Adam Edwards. Adam had a really interesting situation here, and I want to get him online so he can explain it to me. Hey, Adam, how's it going?
Hey, doing well, Coach. I'm doing well. I guess you can see my question there.
Yeah, when you outline it for us all.
All right, so I'm at 34 right now. I make six figures as a government contractor, and I'm about to put in for a well. I hate to admit this, but my mother is putting in for a home equity loan because she believes in me that much that I can be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I live in Florida, and I can feel this. What I've come to realize is I can feel the noose tightening around my neck as far as the intersectional terrorists that we have out there in this country. So I'm not. I mean, this whole ride of working six figures as a government contractor, it's going to be, it could be gone tomorrow. So I live in Florida right now. I have been trying to put together a board of directors to get I've mentioned it before, but to do a series of mergers and acquisitions in a fragmented industry. It's been a little bit slow going because a lot of people don't deliver on their promises. That's something I've been flexible about, but and I'm not to say that I would definitely follow every piece of advice to a T, but what could you possibly recommend to me as far as what would you do if you had an extra injection of $105,000, no children and no wife?
Well, okay, like first of all, I can't give you any kind of financial advice because I do believe that would be illegal on the one hand. On the other hand, see, accumulating a bunch of money, it's fun and all that, but what's the point of it? See, you have to have a reason to have money. Money, if, as an end in itself, serves no purpose. And it seems to me what you should be thinking about is what kind of life do you want to have? Or let me phrase this. What kind of plateau are you looking to reach in your life? Because you have to think to yourself, and this goes for everybody. See, by the time you get to 60, 65, that's it. You're pretty much done, okay? Because your body will have aged and you're just not going to feel up for doing whatever. And also, you're just not going to have those opportunities. You have opportunities when you're young, in your 30s, your 40s, even your 50s. But you hit 60 and over, and you're not going to have new opportunities. So you want to be living your life so that you get to that plateau of 60, 65, and you have achieved the goals that you wanted to achieve with your life. Okay, I'm going to mute you because there's like some feedback going on. Okay. And so a point that you should be thinking about, whatever your age is, okay, is you should be thinking that 60 to 65, you want to be at your plateau in all aspects of your life, financially, emotionally, your family, your friends. You want to have your shit down. You want to be calm when you hit 60. By the time you hit 60, 65, you want to have your fuck you money. You want to have your woman, your kids. You want to have your set of friends, your social environment, your social milieu. You want to be done. You want to be at that plateau. If you think of your life, that you start like at the bottom of a canyon, right? Like the Grand Canyon, and you climb. And you climb and you climb, and I always say that you're aiming for a peak, but that's not true. What you're aiming for is a plateau. You're going to climb out of, you know, the Colorado River, the Snake River, whatever it's called. You climb up the sides of the Grand Canyon, and when you get to the very top, what is it? It's a plateau, and you can rest. Okay? You got to be thinking of that plateau. So whatever the fuck you're doing now, doesn't matter. It has to be in service of that plateau for when you're 60. And you have to be thinking along those lines. And you see, Adam, you're asking me, you know, what to do with, you know, this amount of money today. But I don't know, because you got to figure out what your plateau is. What would make you happy insofar as your life is concerned? I was telling you about this friend of mine out in New York who's a corporate guy, and he has ambitions to have a large family, raise his kids right. He's Catholic. He wants to have a bunch of kids and just have a happy life and a normal life. And he's come to the conclusion that that plateau cannot be achieved in the United States. And that's why we were talking so long yesterday. Like I said, we talked for at least 2 hours, might have been as many as 3 hours. And it was because of that. He needed someone that he trusted, whose judgment he trusted, to work out what to do with his life, because he's successful. Like you're successful, you have a bunch of money. This guy, he's got a pot of money. You know, he owns his own home in a major city, so that's a lot of money there. You know, and owns it outright, right? And he, you know, he makes big money at his corporation. I mean, he's doing fine, but the money doesn't help because it's an important ingredient. It's an essential ingredient to reach your plateau, but if there are other things that are lacking that will not allow you to reach your plateau, then what's the point? And he wants to have a big family. He wants to have a Catholic family. And he has reluctantly realized that that's not going to happen in the United States. We were talking about what would be the one place in the United States where this intersectionality bullshit would not touch him, right? And honest to God, I couldn't think of one place, except like some places like Idaho, wherever the fuck, but not any kind of like mainstream place. And I'm like, okay, then, you know, maybe you should be thinking of Eastern Europe. And we started game playing the notion of moving to Eastern Europe, and the advantages were really obvious. But see, the advantages were obvious because his plateau, his mountaintop that is a plateau, was clear. He sees himself, he's actually your age, he's 34, and he sees what plateau he wants to reach, okay? He sees it. He sees himself as an established guy in his social environment with 5 kids, 8 kids, and a nice wife, a nice house, not like a super billionaire. He doesn't give a shit about that, but he's respected in his professional community and his social community, and he goes to church and he's respected there in his church, and he's got a nice woman by his side who at that point they're going to be looking forward to grandkids. That's the life that he wants. That's his plateau. And so once you have fixed that, then your short-term decisions become easy. Because let me unmute you, Adam, because you, Adam, you're telling me about what to do short-term. I don't know what the fuck to tell you to do short-term, because you have to figure out what to do long-term. That's what you should be aiming for. Don't worry about the short-term, worry about the long-term. It seems to me, Adam, that we've talked a couple of times, right? You don't know what to do short-term. I mean, excuse me, long-term. And that's what you should be figuring out first. And then the short-term shit, it solves itself. You see what I'm saying? Hello? Adam, you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we're losing you. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
How about
so
now?
yeah. So you see what I'm saying?
No, that is extremely helpful, because now I'm going to go back and I'm going to reframe this question.
Okay.
Because that wasn't. Yeah, that's not the kind of question that you're right. That's not the kind of question that I should have. But I think reframing it and taking a step back, you know, I think that I know that I was meant more than what I'm currently doing right now. I was meant for a lot more. That's how I felt for a long time. I was in Iraq for 15 months. I watched a young man burn alive in front of me, and that's the moment that was the tipping off point. You are more than what you are right now.
Yeah. I hope this helps, Adam. Okay. Talk to you soon. Take it easy.
Yeah, it does.
Guido Castro Giovanni. Guido, let me find you here. has a kind of interesting question. So Guido, how's it going? Hit me up. What's up?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. What's up?
Perfect. Just first time here in the webinar. Greetings from the Mapocho station. Well,
Greetings.
questions are, I'm a young guy. I'm 23. I moved aboard here to Chile just because I found an opportunity to leave Paraguay. My family's from Argentina, so I never felt like I fit there. I never liked the culture, the reality there. So I'm here as a trampoline, and I'm here just to work. And my question is, I want to go to the core of Europe. And what you share with us is, well, what you share, the community, red pill, everything is gloom. Like you're putting effort for nothing. But I really feel like I want to put my efforts to be there when what I stand for needs me. So what do you think? Am I being a fool, or?
I don't understand your question. Can you reframe it?
Yes, like, am I wasting myself by pursuing the things that I value?
No,
I'm here in Chile. I don't know. I just want some guidance.
Okay, but what are you pursuing in Chile at this time?
Here, achieve some capital so I can jump into a job in Europe, something like that.
Yeah, you want to travel in Europe, right?
Not travel, make a living in Europe.
You want to make a living in Europe. Where in Europe specifically?
No in particular. I like Italy and Spain just for roots, but can be anywhere.
Okay. Well, see, look, number one, you're 23, right? So right now, your job, if you will, is to gain experience. Because you're not going to really accomplish much, and because nobody's going to pay that much attention to you because you're young still. I mean, you're still a kid on the one hand, and on the other hand, what's going on is that you want to accumulate experiences that later on will prove invaluable. And so what you should be doing is not locking yourself in to any environment where you don't have a lot of stimulus from other people. What you should be doing is going out into the world and always saying yes to any opportunity, okay? You don't want to stay in your room, basically. I assume that you've already finished university at this point?
I dropped out of university. I was in science and dropped out because it was going nowhere for me. Like, for me,
actually a good sign. That's a good sign, because I think that most universities nowadays are just a complete waste of time. You should go out and try to get jobs, get work, anything at all, and interact with as many people as possible and get as much experience with other people as possible. And always say yes. And even when you're scared of any kind of experience that comes your way, you always say yes to the experience. And if you have the opportunity to climb in any company or any work environment, take it. Do more. Okay? Don't waste your time partying and quote unquote having a good time, because you're not going to have a good time and you're not going to learn anything. And what you should be using your early 20s for is to learn shit. When I was between the ages of 19 and 23, I worked as an English teacher. It was the best thing in my life. I worked between 6 and 9 hours a day teaching class. And yeah, it was very repetitive and boring in the sense of, like, I had students all the time, but I kept meeting different people and having to handle different people and learning how to interact with people. And it was an incredibly good experience. I did it starting in, what was it, 88, 89, 90, and most of 91. So 3.5 years. And those 3.5 years retrospectively were among the most important in my life, because I learned to deal with people. I learned to deal with people. I learned to manage people. I learned how to lead people, because as a teacher of you have between 6 and a dozen adults, because I taught English as a second language, English to adults, right? I had to stand there in front of a room full of people and tell them, this is how you do it. You say this, you say that, you don't say this, you do say that. I'm bossing them around and leading them in a class, and it taught me so much. It taught me, of course, when you teach something, you learn it really well. So it helped me a lot insofar as learning English really well, the grammar of it, the structure of it, and all the rest of it, which proved invaluable to me later on as a writer. But it also taught me how to interact with groups. The fact that I'm talking to you now and talking to 60 odd people here in this webinar, it comes from that experience, my ability to do that, because everything that you have in your life, you learn it. And so you in your 20s, your early 20s, you should be learning stuff, learning to do stuff, going out of your way. And if you're not learning in a structured environment like a university, then you're learning by going out and rubbing up against the world. Okay? So don't worry about doing this or doing that. Just worry about experiencing as much as possible and interacting with as many people as possible. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see. It's part of what I am in right now. Like, I
Yeah.
mainly focus in being a bookworm, and I do computer science.
Insofar as going, insofar as going to Europe, this is what I would recommend. Don't go to Spain or Italy. Go to someplace really fucking different. Okay? Like Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, wherever the fuck.
I
And
really
learn
like
the language. What?
I really like Poland, but I feel like the language is a really big challenge. I like that they're traditional Catholic, and they look like a nice bulwark for the West, at least in Western Europe.
Go there and learn the language. Yeah. Fuck yeah, go. You know. I mean, why not? You will. What is holding you back? You're in Mapocho Station, right? I know Mapocho Station. Sort of like a shithole, right? And there you are, and what are you doing? Nothing, right? Just fucking go. What's holding you back? And you go there, and you're there for like, you'll pick up the language pretty quick. And if you study and study it by yourself, or get somebody to help you with Polish, you'll learn to read Polish and write Polish, and you'll be able to speak it. And set yourself up there. I mean, or Ukraine or Belarus or Russia or wherever the fuck. Hungary.
Right.
That's a great
I want to be at least, especially because we're in unstable times, at least 2 to 3 years here in Chile, making up some savings and getting experience in my field. So when I go there, I'm not just a noob.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. That's a plan. But see, be thinking now what life that you want. Okay. Like I said before to Adam, when I was saying that you should be thinking about what you want to be when you're 60. You want to be thinking about that now. Okay. Not like the details. Don't make this fixed in your head, but think of more or less what you want to achieve. What kind of, like, what is the shape of your life? I did a video a long time ago called "Your Life is a Car." Okay.
I remember.
Yeah.
The days are long, but the decades are short. That was a video that inspired me to take the jump here to Chile. Like, ignore what my family said. No, what are you going to do there, and come here just to build myself up.
Yeah. Look, see, when you proactively go out there and do shit, even when it's mistakes, even when it's failures, it's still experience. Okay. And the more experience you have, the better it will be the next time. There's this great line from Beckett, Samuel Beckett, the Irish writer. The line is something like, try again, fail better. Okay, always fail better. Okay, you're always going to be failing and failing, but you have to fail better. And you only fail by trying. If you never try, yeah, you never fail, but you never succeed. Okay, because that's the point. It's a numbers game. A numbers game in the sense of that you keep on playing at the roulette wheel, you're eventually going to win. And so that's why you should accumulate more experience. You say that you want to have 2 years in Chile and gain the experience there. Great, do that. But set yourself the goal of, okay, when I hit this mark, I'm going to move to wherever. Okay. And by the way, while you're in Chile, if you have another destination that you have in the future, start preparing for it. You can start learning Polish now in Chile, right? Instead of playing video games and jerking off, you can start doing that. You see, but always be thinking and and have a vision for yourself of what you want to achieve with your life. Okay? Set that vision for you as early as possible. Not like all detail, but like generally what you want the shape of your life to feel like. Okay? And if you're not sure, look at older people. You're 23, look at a guy who's like 50 something, 60 something. His life is pretty much over, in the sense that there isn't going to be great changes in his life. Wherever he is now, that's pretty much the life that he's going to have until the end of his days. Look at those men and say, which one do you want to emulate? Which one do you want to be like? And notice those guys who are 50 something, 60 something, and they don't have anything. They have a shit life. They're just like bums, right? That can teach you, because those guys, they weren't paying attention. They were just driving around with their lives. They didn't have a destination in mind. And then they finally ran out of gas, and there they are. And they've got no more opportunities. It's over for them. The trip is done. They ran out of gasoline. For those of you who don't know, the video I'm talking about is called Your Life is a Car. You can find it in the Coach Red Pill channel. And what I basically said is that your life is like a metaphor in the sense of it's a car. You wake up in the morning and you hop in the car. But in real life, when you hop in a car, you don't hop in the car and just drive around at random. No, you hop in your car and you have a destination in mind. Either you're going to go to the coast, or you're going to go to another city, or you're going to go to the, I did this video in London. So yeah, I said you're going to go to Buckingham Palace or wherever the fuck you're going, but you have a destination in mind. That's how you drive in your car. You never hop in the car and drive around at random. No, because if you do that, you'll just drive around at random and then run out of gas, and wherever you are, well, that's your destination, right? That's stupid. But so many people live their lives like that, and you should never live your life like that. You should have a destination, not a precise destination of exactly how you want your life to end up, but more or less a sense of like, that's the kind of life that I want to reach, that I want to achieve. Okay? Because when you do that, when you picture that before, it's far easier to reach it, as opposed to just living your life at random and allowing circumstance and chance to buffet you and throw you around. You're like a ball in the ocean with no direction. What you want to be is an ocean liner in the ocean, going to a port, to a destination. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, sorry for that rant, but Guido, yeah, what else? Anything else on mine? By the way, are you enjoying, you said that you just joined up. Are you enjoying the Patreon stuff?
The Patreon stuff, yes, pretty much. I have a logged on bank account from the US that I cannot access, but I just put it here on Patreon to use that money. Based on the last point,
are you liking the content that is here on Patreon?
Yes, it's not much so different or radical to not be on YouTube, but it's nice to have a more coachy place.
Yeah,
especially for the webinars.
Yes, it is more cozy. Yeah, it is. Guido, thank you so much for being on, man. Hope to see you next week.
Exactly, but just one question.
Go ahead.
Poland and the Netherlands, which one would you choose with the basic knowledge that you got of me?
Poland or the Netherlands?
Yes.
Good question. The Netherlands is it has a lot of different cities. So let's take Amsterdam. Okay, Amsterdam is the most fun city. Okay, and it's the most international city. Just about everybody speaks English. Okay, that's not the case in other cities in Netherlands. All right, and also a lot of the Netherlands is sort of depressing. At least to me, the architecture is really boring, and just people are kind of like boring. And I prefer Amsterdam of any other place in the Netherlands. Okay, it's fun to be in Amsterdam for a time, but it's sort of like summer camp. It's not the place you want to be.
I'm much more interested in Rotterdam or Utrecht for Netherlands. I'm not really a party or funny guy, so that's not really what drives me. I love architecture.
Then Rotterdam or Utrecht, which are more business-like cities, I would actually go for Poland. I think that there are more opportunities because I haven't lived in Poland, but what I see of the Netherlands, it's very structured. The people are not particularly friendly. They're friendly to your face and pleasant, but they don't invite you. They're not warm. Okay.
Like Canadians.
Like what?
Like Canadians.
I don't know about that, but in Holland they're kind of like standoffish. They want to keep you at arm's length, but they're very friendly. I mean, polite to you, and friendly and smiling, but they don't want to be friends. Okay, whereas the Polish people
complete outsider in Poland, the only thing that binds me to them would be religion and Western values. The language could be a barrier. Do they have many English-speaking people?
I don't know about that. I don't know. The Polish people I've met, they all spoke English, but of course, because I don't speak Polish, so obviously. But I don't know about that. But I would think it's a bigger and better adventure for you at your age to go to Poland. I think that if you're not into like partying and having a good time like in Amsterdam, then yeah, there's no point in going to Amsterdam, because Amsterdam, I live here, by the way. Amsterdam, a week here and you know the town, and it's boring. After that, because to tell you the truth, it's not particularly interesting to me, and I don't particularly care for being here anymore. But that's the truth of the matter. It's just, no, you can, you can, yeah, you can forego Amsterdam. But Poland, I think, it has more opportunities, a lot more opportunities. Eastern Europe in general has a lot more opportunities, because what's going on also too is in Eastern Europe, they are seeing what's happening in the West, and they want no part of it, and they are not going to let it happen. They don't like this this westernized decadent phase that's going on in Western Europe and the United States. They want nothing to do with that. The experiences of Soviet domination for so many decades are too fresh, and they see what's happening and they reject it. And that's why it seems to me that you would get more satisfaction, you personally, Guido, would get more satisfaction and happiness in Poland or Hungary or Ukraine or Belarus or Russia than you would get in the Netherlands or Spain or Italy. Yeah,
So
even
you
though
say,
it would be harder. It would be harder for you, but in the long run, it would be more valuable. Yes.
all right, so you don't recommend me going from Chile to Spain or Italy as another jump, and then
No.
jump finally to Poland, Hungary, or
No.
Bulgaria.
I would recommend that you're 23, right? You can, what you could do is you could just get a backpack, fly out to Hungary or Poland, and look around until you find the place that you'd be happy. Okay, and you'll know. By the way, I remember a period of my life when I was traveling around the United States on a Land Rover. This was back in 2000, 2001. I drove around for about 8 months. I went all around the North American continent on a Land Rover with my dog. And I got to this one neighborhood outside of Portland, Oregon, and it was really nice. It was much better than any other place I'd been to. It was just welcoming. It was a place I fit. And for a time, I thought to myself that I could live here and be very, very happy. And for various reasons, I didn't do it at the time. And I kind of regretted it. But it was really interesting because when I got there, I just knew that this was a place that was welcoming, that I fit, that this was good for me, you know? And so my thinking is that and I've had that feeling in a couple of other places, that you just arrive and you're like, yeah, this place is for me, you know? And so that's why I would recommend that you're 23, you go around Hungary or Poland. I recommend those two countries because they're bigger and they're more traditional. They're not so in love with the West the way, like, say, the Czech Republic is, right? And like countries like Slovenia or Slovakia are just too small. But Hungary and Poland, they have radically different languages. I mean, Hungarian is impossible. I was in Budapest once, and it was a beautiful trip, beautiful city, impossible to understand the language, at least to me. But for your age, yeah, you want to go there, look around, and find a place where you feel welcome, and you'll know it. You know, it won't be a big, it won't be a big struggle. It'll feel like you're putting on a glove that fits. You know. So that's what I recommend you do.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Coach.
No problem. Great talking to you, man. Talk to you soon.
Same. See you.
Ooh. Shit, Guido, I'm so sorry. I cut you off. I'm sorry, Guido. That was inadvertent, because again, I'm not a producer. I wish I were. Well, let me see here. Paul Smith has made like a bunch of comments. So let me hit Paul Smith. You around? Where's Paul's? Oh, there he is. Paul Smith. Sorry about that. Paul, are you there? Hello, Paul. Hello, Paul. Oh man, configure your microphone.
Hey,
Oh, there you are. Paul, you there?
hey, can you hear me? Nice, nice, nice. No, happy to be here. I like just got the app, and yeah, I'm just getting used to it. I don't even really know how it works.
Oh, well, I hear you fine. Everybody hears you fine. So what's on your mind, man?
Yeah. So pretty much like I've been like leading a revolution here in Vancouver. I've been reading Les Miserables. And I feel like I've kind of discovered a secret in the world because the French Revolution, I think like the Waterloo and Napoleon really is what was going on. Just like it got started on May 22nd. Like, I don't really read books that fast, and I've just been reading Les Miserables, and just kind of at the rate I read the book, it's really kind of accurate with the transitions of what's going on in the world. And right now, I think we're on volume 3 in that book. But yeah, no, like I love your channel. Like I've been following it for a while, and pretty much this is kind of the place where I think it's like a good place to like brainstorm, the right things to do in the world. And I definitely don't know where else to do that. But yeah, I really believe in like capitalism and stuff like this. And I think like where we were going was like partying. I think that's where we were going. I think everyone's like, oh, we got to worry about order. We got to worry about all this.
Okay, Paul,
But
Paul.
I think
I'm gonna have to rein you in.
yeah.
Okay. Do you have something you want to talk about specifically because you're like going all over the place? Hello?
Pretty much I just kind of hey.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead.
Pretty much I just wanted to yeah, okay. I pretty much I just wanted to come in, and I wanted to pretty much say what I think here, and
Okay.
then I don't know, just I want to say what I think here, and then yeah, like kind of brainstorm like okay, so I think if we want to remember
Oh, you're breaking up, Paul. Okay, you're like going robotic. Okay, look, anybody who wants to brainstorm with Paul Smith, send him your email. I think that you can contact him directly. And so get in touch with him. Okay, great talking to you, Paul. There's a guy called Shane Rogers who had like a pretty interesting question. Shane, about YouTubing. Are you there, Shane?
Yes, Coach. It's been a while, but glad to be talking with you again.
Oh, great to talk to you, man. What's up?
Hey, so I just got in touch with an old friend of mine, and he just told me that he's starting a YouTube show because he's kind of just he doesn't have a job, and he's figured, oh well, maybe YouTubing should be my next next avenue. So I kind of know a little bit of the ins and outs of YouTubing, but maybe you can probably give me some more, explain some more of the rewards that come with just having a YouTube show, but also what are the costs? Like, what's the price that you? Well, I wouldn't say the price, but what's the cost of having a YouTube show? And I know it varies depending on what the type of content you are creating, but maybe you could kind of go into the generalities.
Sure. Well, first of all, is you just need gear, right? And it doesn't really matter how cheap your gear is. Okay, a lot of people think that, oh, you need the most expensive gear or this or that. And there are gear fags, you know, these guys who like insist of having the most expensive gear in whatever endeavor they're doing, YouTubing, riding a motorcycle, climbing a mountain. They insist in having all kinds of gear, expensive gear. Those are gear fetishists, and you know, ignore them. To get a YouTube channel going, all you need is a cheap web camera and a good mic. Spend more money on the microphone than on the camera. Because, see, people will forgive lousy image, but they won't forgive bad sound, okay? So you want to have as good a sound as possible. Like, for instance, right now, I'm talking to you on a Rode Podcaster mic, which is fairly expensive. Why did I buy it? Because people, you know, they want to be able to hear somebody really clearly and real, you know, crisp. Yeah, they don't want crappy microphone. Right. So don't stint on the microphone. Don't spend $1,000 on a fucking microphone. You know, you can get like a lapel microphone from Rode that plugs into your phone or whatever for like $100, I think, like that, something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it's not that much. Like this podcaster mic, I think I could be wrong, but I think it's like 150 bucks. It's like a big fat white microphone. It looks like a dildo that plugs straight into your computer with a USB port. And I think it's like 150 bucks. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. But the point is, you get good sound stuff. The web camera doesn't matter. And tinker with the editing software. You get like cheap editing software, right? And don't spend a lot of money, because editing software is really pretty much any editing software is as good as any other, okay? You want to get decent editing software that you can fool around with and as cheap as possible. Good microphone, like I said, a camera, just a web camera or whatever, right? Now, experiment with editing and look at other people, what they're doing, and look at how they edit their videos. Now, that's insofar as making the actual videos. Insofar as the content, the kind of content, you have to find a reason, an audience that you are making your videos for. You want to be thinking to yourself, who do I want to watch this video? When I started out my channel, I was thinking to myself that the videos I was going to make were going to be for my kid when he's older, when he's in his 20s and 30s, perhaps when I'm not around, or perhaps I don't have all my marbles. That was the origin of the videos that I was doing. Now, I was doing it for about 15 months before my channel took off. After 15 months of doing videos, I had 15,000 subscribers, something like that. And it took a long time to get the first 1,000. The fact is, you know, when I started putting out videos, at first, nobody saw them. I mean, I was getting zero traction. I would put videos and videos. I had like 30 videos. Nothing was happening. And what I started doing is I got on Reddit, of all places, on the Red Pill page, I think I was. And I started like basically advertising my videos on YouTube. And that's when I started getting an audience. And I started putting up videos in May of 2017. It was, no, late April of 2017. It was all of May, all of June, and by the 4th of July, I had about 1,000 subscribers. So it was like almost 3 months before I had 1,000 subscribers. And I was putting out content consistently, sometimes every day. And it was like really well produced, really thoughtful stuff. And it took a long time to catch on, right? And what happened was that it was like in November of 17 that I started putting ads on my videos, not because I was going to get any money. I didn't think I was going to get any money, but I had heard that if your channel was monetized, then the YouTube algorithm was more likely to show it to other people. And I monetized it in like, I think it was October, November of 2017. And anyway, I started in like late April of 17. By January, February of 18, I was thinking of winding down the channel. I didn't think I was going to have many more subscribers or that it would be any bigger, right? And what happened was that I was actually winding it down. I was starting to do like live streams, experimenting with live streams, and just like it was just winding down. And then in June, this video that I posted in September of 17, never date a girl over the age of 25, right?
Yep, that's how I found you.
That video popped. It just blew up. for no reason whatsoever. It just popped. And all of a sudden I had like 3 viral videos in a row. There was that one. It was women who are damaged goods, or recognize women who are damaged goods, and never date a single mother. And those 3 videos just took off. And all of a sudden I crossed 100,000 subscribers, and it just kept on growing. And that's when YouTube put a stop to it. They stopped showing my content to prospective viewers, and my channel started leveling off. It wasn't because the content had decayed. It was because YouTube just didn't want to show my content to other people. I saw it. I have screenshots of the times when a video was just exploding and they just stopped it. It was like somebody put a foot on the audience, because it has like these bar graphs that show the audience numbers, and all of a sudden it would just be squashed. And that was obviously YouTube editorial decision on the part of YouTube. And so anyway, the YouTube, I started doing that, and then I started the Patreon. I started the Patreon really early because everybody did Patreon. I figured, oh, well, I'll just do it anyway. But it was really going nowhere. I had like, I don't know, like 5, 10 subscribers or something like that. But in October of 18, I started being really religious about doing 1 video a week on Patreon, and people liked it. And so I kept on doing that. And so the issue becomes like, you have to be consistent. Release material on a consistent basis. You have to have a clear notion of who your audience is. I mean, know who you're making your videos for. Who's your audience? My audience is super clear. I make it for guys between, 18 and 40. And the fact of the matter is, my audience is 97% guys, and 65% of my audience is between 18 and 34. So I'm hitting my demographic. Those are the people who want to watch my content. And I have a clear editorial line. I came up with the editorial line in the name, Coach Red Pill. It's cringy as fuck. I knew that when I came up with it, but it keeps me on point as to what I'm trying to achieve, which is teach younger guys how to be pragmatic. That's the objective of the channel. Now, Coach Red Pill as a channel, as a brand, has gotten more into like the whole issue of how to be pragmatic with girls. That's fine, because a lot of guys like me talking about girls, and so that's fine. I have the Gonzalo Lira channel where I talk about everything else. Tomorrow, hint, hint, I have a new GL video coming out. It's called Invisible Enemies, and I hope you check it out on the GL channel. But the point, see, is that I have clear editorial line, so that's number one. I'm very consistent about uploading of my content because, like, for instance, in my CRP channel and GL channel over the last 3 months or so, I haven't been releasing much material, but now I'm starting up again. And with that consistent release, people are coming back to both channels. And insofar as Patreon, I've always been really consistent. There's also the issue that I feel that I have a financial obligation to my patrons because they're paying good money. They're paying good money every month, $5. $5 is not a lot of money individually, right? But if you're paying $5, you expect to get a service. If you go to a coffee shop and pay $5, you want your cup of coffee. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So it's my responsibility to be producing 1 video a week, and for the webinars rather, 1 webinar per week. But the point is that, see, on the free channels you can fuck around and not post content. On the paid channels, you got to be consistent because like you guys who are listening to me now, I think of you as my audience and I appreciate you very much. But at the same time, I think of you as paying customers, and not in a derogatory sense, but rather in an obligation sense. You are paying good money for me to deliver content. If I'm not delivering good content that I've thought about and worked at, then I'm not doing my job, right? And that's something that I'm very, very nervous and touchy about, that I don't want anybody to ever say that I'm not giving it my best shot insofar as my Patreon content. I mean, I'm not going to go and suck your dick to make you happy, but I'm going to be doing content that is respectable. You can disagree with it or not, that's a different question. But whether the content is going to be solid quality content, the content that you come to expect, fucking A. I mean, I'm going to maintain a level of quality. And that's what you have to do if you're going to have some kind of career. And you have to be consistent. Consistency, a lot of times, and you'll find in most things in life, consistency is more important than genius. If you're an inconsistent genius, you will make less money and be less successful than a consistent mediocrity. Because people come to depend on somebody who is consistent. Whereas with a shooting star, it's like, wow, he came up with something amazing, and then, he's gone for whatever period of time, I mean, the shooting star is a spectacle, but the guy who's consistent, people depend on him. You see the difference? And that's why consistency, not just in YouTubing, I'm talking everything, in life. Woody Allen had this great saying, 90% of life is showing up. Yeah, showing up in the sense of being consistent. If you're consistent, you'll succeed. And if you repetitively and consistently, try and try and try again, eventually you're going to hit it big. It's as simple as that. Yeah. The thing that happens in YouTube is that a lot of times people, there are two things that happen in YouTube. Number one, a guy will release 1 or 2 or 3 videos, and maybe like the third video just explodes. And he tries to repeat that explosion, and he doesn't really like that content, but he has to repeat it all the time so that he maintains that level of success. And because of this repetition, he starts to grow and grow and grow, but he doesn't really like that content. Now that's a tragedy, and happens all the time. That people's like first or second or third video goes viral, and they're kind of like locked into doing that video over and over and over again, and they kind of like come to hate it. Okay, that's one thing that happens. And another thing that happens is that a guy will do, he'll find his style, his niche, and do the videos over and over and over again, but nobody really watches him, or he's not doing it long enough for his audience to find him. Okay, what happened to me was that I was sort of like, I did the videos that I kind of like wanted to do for my kid. And by the way, I have all these videos like locked up in several different drives so that I don't lose them or anything. They're all backed up and they're all fine. I mean, my channel could disappear and my videos won't be lost. And also I made like a bunch of videos about personal shit that I'll never air because they're like personal family shit, but that I use the format of making videos to discuss these things that are important to my kid, so that when he's an older guy, he'll know certain things about family history and shit like that. These are videos that are totally personal and never be aired. But see, the point I'm trying to make is that, see, in my own case, I went from late April of 17 up until the beginning of 2018, and I pretty much achieved what I wanted to achieve insofar as the group of videos that I wanted my kid to see. And I was starting to wind down the channel. But then in June, I had this viral hit. And so the sense was, well, I'll keep going and see how it goes. And it kept going and going, okay? And what happened also is inevitably the money started coming in, and it's a lot of money, okay? I'm not gonna discuss like the details, right? But you can sort of like figure out like, okay, I've got like, I think it's like 2,100, 2,200 subscribers on Patreon. And they're paying between $5 and $10, but of course there are far fewer who are paying $10 than $5. But you can pretty much figure out more or less how much I'm earning from Patreon. And also there's the ad revenue, okay? And that all adds up. It adds up to quite a bit of money, to tell you the truth. And it's enough money that all of a sudden, even though it was a hobby that didn't earn me shit for like the longest time, for over a year or so that I was doing it, now it's earning a decent amount of money. It's not enough money. It's not so little money that I can walk away from it. See? And it's a hobby that I enjoy, because I enjoy doing this. I mean, I enjoy it tremendously. I find an enormous amount of satisfaction from it. And so if it's something that I'm enjoying and they get satisfaction out of it and it's paying me good money, then I'd be a fool to leave it. But I'm perfectly aware that one day this is all going to end. And that day is soon. I don't know when, but if you were to tell me that in 6 months or a year it's all gone and it all went away, I wouldn't be surprised. It's not going to affect me, okay? Because certainly it's great to be earning money now, but I mean, if the money that I'm earning now disappeared, my life is not really going to change, because I've got money on my own. I get some criticism from people who say, oh, if you have money of your own, why are you charging shit, right? That's stupid. That's like saying, you're like, you're earning, like you yourself, for instance, are earning, $4 grand a month in your job or whatever, and you see a $20 bill lying there. Are you going to say, oh, I'm earning so much money that I'm not going to stoop to pick it up? That'd be stupid. That's the same from my point of view. It's the same thing. It's like, oh, well, why are you charging things you shouldn't charge? Why not? If people want to, and more importantly, if you're delivering good quality material, then there's no problem, okay? I mean, if you're not delivering good quality material, then that's a different story. But if you're delivering, if you're making a promise and delivering what you promise, it's like, if you offer a cup of coffee and people slap a $5 on the table and you deliver that cappuccino with like a little, with a foam that makes it look like a flower or a tree or whatever the fuck, and people are happy with the cup of coffee, what's wrong with that? I mean, that's my thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, to go back to how to succeed at YouTube, know your demographic, be consistent, and understand that it could be that you never succeed. The odds are more likely than not that you will not succeed. Okay. I still to this day have no idea why my videos all of a sudden exploded. I know why I started getting a few views at first, because I sort of like advertised my content on Reddit to get an audience, because my first few videos, I get like 10 views. It was so depressing, because I put a lot of effort into it. And also at that stage, there was a big learning curve of learning how to edit, learning how to shoot, learning all this stuff. And I learned a great deal in the first, I don't know, 30, 40 videos, but I was getting no views whatsoever. I'm not kidding. It was like 10, 15 views. It was fucking depressing. It was only when I started going on Reddit and sort of like advertising and, writing these posts on Reddit and with a little link to a video of mine on my channel to get traffic, right? That's only then that I started getting something, It took me like, actually, I think I have it written up there on the about page of my channel. Let me go check it out real quick. Hang on a second, hang on. Oh, wait, I'm going to my channel now while we're talking, and let me see the about page. I actually wrote it. Yeah, hang on. The about page, yeah. It took me a month to get 100 subscribers. A solid month, and I was doing content like just about every day, okay? From the end of April to, I want to say it was April 20th to May 20th of 2017. It took me a solid month to get 100 subscribers. And then it took me a solid month to get to 500 subscribers. And then another month to get to 1,000 subscribers. And then it's just slowly built. Yeah, and that's how it happened. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. And so this notion that you can just like set it up and whatever. And remember, when I started it, it was a hobby. I was just doing it because at that time in my life, I was between projects of work projects. I wanted to do something radically different. And I was very conscious of my young son, who at the time wasn't even 2 years old. And I was very worried that he'd be in his 20s and I wouldn't be around or would be too senile to help him out. And so that was the motivation to do the videos. Retrospectively, I'm really glad that I did that, because not only did I have this content that he'll have access to, but it also made me very conscious as to what I'm trying to achieve. I'm not chasing views. I'm trying to make a certain kind of content. And that makes it much better for me, like in general. And like the whatever ups and downs happens, whatever vicissitudes happen insofar as making content, it doesn't really affect me. It doesn't really affect me because I know my line. You see what I'm saying? Oh man, I've been babbling for all this time, man. I'm sorry this has gone on so long, man. I've been ranting at this point. I hope you forgive me, Shane, but I hope I've answered your question.
No. I actually, you pretty much gave some really good insights, and I took some notes, so it was good. By the way, have you heard of Donovan Sharp at all?
Vaguely. Who's Donovan Sharp?
He's a red pill YouTuber, but he kind of he's very, very good at I actually discovered him after you kind of took a break during.
You were cheating on me.
I know.
You were trying to replace
I
me.
know. I know. When
Fuck
you
man.
did that Gonzalo
No
Lira channel,
loyalty.
I was
No
like,
loyalty.
no red
Oh,
pill content.
I'm
And he
so
just
hurt. Oh my God, the
now
betrayal, the knife in the back.
oh, it's
I'm
it's
teasing
all
him.
right. It's all right. He's a side chick, so
Oh, a side chick. Fuck you. Well, at least I'm your wife. Good to know. I'm the wife. No, but anyway, Shane, no, tell me about him.
you
Is
should
his content
definitely
any good?
you should definitely check him out, because a lot of times when men, they kind of go down the MGTOW route, they go further into MGTOW and they end up going black pill, because they don't see they see the problem, but they don't understand the solution. And I remember you posted a video saying the only way to really deal with this problem is to learn game. And and then right around when I watched that video, I think that's when I started seeing videos of Donovan Sharp. I checked him out. He actually is very, very good at really dissecting game and female nature, and really helping you understand and learn and master game. I highly would recommend him just to watch maybe like couple clips of him. But he's really, really, really good at dissecting female nature down, so that you can actually see, like, in real time what's actually happened. Because you shouldn't always take a woman by what she says, but by what she does.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And he
Well,
dissects it on a daily basis.
Everything. It's
right.
for men and women. Okay.
Right.
Ignore what they say and pay attention to what they do. Yeah. But
Yeah.
okay, look, I'm looking at his channel now. Donovan Sharp with an E at the end, by the way, guys.
Correct.
And he's got 63,100 subscribers. I'm looking at his most popular videos. He's got like 250,000 views for something called Post-Wall Feminist Questions, Everything After Getting Red Pilled, I guess. Then another which has roughly 250,000 views. 42-year-old regrets leaving her fiance at 19 to sleep around. Yeah, I heard that story. That was pretty goddamn funny. Yeah, it seems like red pill content aimed to men for about women. Yeah, so check it out. It seems really good, and thanks for the recommendation. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and tell me how it goes with your buddy. What's your buddy's name? Does he have a channel up at this point?
He does. It's kind of small. It's the Tabian JB show. I kind of glanced at it a little bit, and it's got I mean, they've got some videos. I think the problem with them is they don't know what their audience is yet, so they're just posting random videos.
Can you tell me hang on a second. Let me get a new tab here. Can you post the name of the guy?
Yeah. Well, it's the guy. Well, it's the.
How do you spell it?
Huh?
How do you spell it?
It's Tabi and JB show.
Okay, but how do you spell that?
Oh, it's TB.
Mm-hmm.
And then like it's as in like the and symbol.
Yeah.
And JB show.
TB and JB show.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, the TB and JB show. Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and they got 57 subscribers.
Yep.
And they have like 6 videos, and they started a week ago, and none of the videos have more than 50 views.
Correct.
Okay, well they're trying, yeah, so I'll check them out just for shits and giggles. But yeah, they have to figure out what they're doing. Who's their audience? Yeah. Look,
and
usually the thing that the audience that you want to aim for is yourself, because ultimately every video that I do, you know who I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about myself when I was 18, 19. That's who I'm thinking about. Even when I was, starting out, and I was saying that I was doing videos for my son when he's younger. Yeah. But, I don't know what my son is going to be when he's an older kid, like when he's 20 or 25 or whatever. but I do remember what I was, who I was, and what I was interested in when I was, 15, 19, 24, you know what I mean? And so usually what you want to do is make videos for yourself, in the sense of like imagining yourself right now, or perhaps younger, and imagining what would be appealing to him, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So anyway, Shane, it's great talking to you again, and I hope to catch you next time, okay?
Absolutely, Coach. It has always been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm going to call it a stream because I'm all of a sudden I'm out of gas, and yeah, we've gone 3 hours. So yeah, I think that this went well. I hope it went well. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's have a show of hands. Hang on, let me put everybody's hand down. And who enjoyed the show? Raise your hands. Raise your hands if you enjoyed the show. Raise your hands if you enjoyed the show. That's great. That's more than 50%, and that sounds great to me. Yeah, and I hope that everything that I discussed here, insofar as logic, intuition, and critical thinking, is something that you will apply. It's like I said before, the difference between men and women, and men and children, and men and every other creature on this earth, is that we can set aside our emotions, and we can use our reason and our logic and our acquired knowledge, that is the knowledge that you learn from a book or from a teacher, and our experience, that is the things that actually happen to us. You can use these things to make decisions, logical, rational decisions of where you want to go. There's no sin in feeling a strong emotion such as fear, sadness, anger, hatred even. There's nothing wrong with that. But what it is wrong is to allow those emotions to dictate your actions. You never want to do that. You want to experience the emotion, let it flow through you, set it aside, and use your reason and your logic, your acquired knowledge and your experience to dictate your actions. I hope that this discussion of logic, intuition, and critical thinking will help you in that task. That makes you a man. That's the difference between a man and everybody else, okay? And if you understand what is logical, what is critical thinking, what is intuition, and understand that intuition has a place, because a lot of times your intuition will keep you from making mistakes. When you have that feeling that you have a logical decision all set up, you've made the decision, but you just sort of like postpone it, you sort of like procrastinate and don't move forward with it, a lot of times it's your intuition, your subconscious is holding you back because it has realized something that your conscious mind has yet to realize. A quick parenthesis before I end the webinar. A few weeks ago, actually, I was supposed to do something, some legal process, and I was all set to do it. It was all ready. All I just had to do is sign some papers and go to a notary with a lawyer and have it notarized and done. But I kept postponing it. I like procrastinating it. And then one morning I woke up and I realized why. I'd made a critical mistake. And all of a sudden I realized, thank God. But I realized too that procrastination, that feeling, that like, that intuition that was holding me back, I was like procrastinating this bureaucratic thing that retrospectively I realized, had I gone ahead with it, I would have gotten into a big disaster. And it was avoided, thank God. Okay. I mean, nothing, illegal or nothing bad, but I would have set myself up for problems down the road. And this intuition kept me back. Always listen to that little voice. If you are procrastinating or not getting ahead with something, ask yourself why. Maybe you are seeing something. And a lot of times, just the simple task of asking yourself, the simple act rather, of asking yourself why you are procrastinating, why you're not allowing yourself to do something, it's sort of like your subconscious will like kick into the conscious mind the reason, and it's a good reason. Okay, so listen to that little voice, but don't be dictated by it either. Okay, don't be a slave to it. Okay, so anyway, that's the end of this broadcast. Hope to see you next week. Take it easy, my guys.